Hello. We are live, I think. Yes, we're there. Beautiful. Hello, 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 hello. Let's double check that. Sounds good. How are we feeling? I am nervous. Not gonna lie to you. I'm very, very nervous. It's just gonna be a nightmare, isn't it? It's gonna be 57 laps of pure torture. But also a very entertaining end to the 2025 championship season. I've got some sweets. Has anyone tried these? They are top draw. I'm gonna give them a top 10 out of 10 rating. Not actually, they're not as good as regular Chewits. I'm gonna give them a 9 out of 10 rating, but they're very good. World Drivers' Championship decider time. It is indeed. Hello, everybody in the chat. Hello, Sally. Hello, Sarah. Early one for you, Sarah. No, but yeah. Literally said it in the chat earlier. Talker. Hello. T-1 hour indeed. Let's talk about it all. We'll delve into it. Got some statistics to look at, of course. And then we'll dive into the permutations. Made a short about it. Was supposed to come out on Friday, but then I was ill. Also supposed to come out on Thursday. Another short about it. There's been a couple of shorts come out on the channel just completely randomly because they were supposed to come out earlier on in the week. But I was ill on Thursday and Friday. Of course I was. Seb, thank you for becoming a member. Appreciate that. The support on the channel this year has been incredible. Considering the channel, like, just it's our finale as well as the Formula One finale for the 2025 campaign. It feels the support on the channel this year has been insane, considering like it hasn't gone the way I'd have wanted it to. Like, it took a very long time to move house. It took a very long time to sort out my new job. It took a very long time to do other things. So the channel kind of went by the wayside for a little while there. And there were a few months where I was a bit worried about it, if I'm honest. But no, have to say thank you. And I have to say, like, your guys' support this year has been sensational. And Seb also joining as a member just goes to show even more so, like, the members that are already here, everybody who's watched any of the videos, whether it be a short, a long form, a live stream, it all really does help me out and really makes me grateful for what we have got. Lance Stroll will win. Bottle O Norris. Oh, God. Will I be doing more live streams in the off season? Yeah, I hope so. Usually we do a live stream where we sort of rank the drivers, rank the races. We got a few things. It's not actually too far away from the new season. Like, if you think we've got the rest of December, a lot of Christmassy stuff in there. Obviously, we'll do all the post-season reviews. Then we've kind of got January, where a few things will happen, but probably not too much in the Formula One space. Then we're into February, and we already have Red Bull saying that they're going to announce their 2026 car in February. So we're straight back into it. So, like, we're not going to be gone for too long, which is the insanity of the Formula One calendar, isn't it? You only get 7 weeks, 8 weeks, and then we're all back in it again. Of course, Crash Happy as well. Thank you so much to the guys in Crash Happy. I don't say it to them enough. It really has sort of reinvigorated my love for YouTube and sort of given me a little bit of motivation to do better for them as well. And I really do love those guys. Just absolutely have enjoyed every single moment on that channel as well. If you haven't checked out the Crash Happy podcast, it is in its infancy. So we were using the last couple of months as almost like a proof of concept. You know, what kind of views can we get on these kind of videos? And actually, if you look at some of the more popular podcasts in the world or some of the more popular creators in the world, they don't get 10,000 views per video on a podcast channel on YouTube. So, like, we are doing incredibly well and, like, better than I ever thought we would be able to do. So, like, thank you so much for all your support over on Crash Happy as well. But let's stop being sappy, shall we? Let's get into the Formula One already. That's what we're here to talk about. Let's delve into the permutations. The permutations. What has been plaguing my life over the last week. Every single morning I wake up and I go, oh, P3 will just be okay. Ooh, P3. It's going to be fine. But let's get into predictions. Hey, mate, predictions. See, look, you guys know the rigmarole by now. Of course we start with predictions. You guys got your predictions in. I always ask for the predictions over... Oh, wait, is the short stream privated? Why is that privated? Let's make that public, shall we? That was dumb. There we go. Apologies if you usually join us on the short stream. I made that private. Don't know how. It was public earlier. We're there now. Predictions. You guys made your predictions. You can get some more predictions in the chat right now. I'm expecting them to come in. There you go. There's OJ with his prediction for Verstappen, Russell, Piastri top 3. I'm seeing where you're going with it. Where's Lando Norris in that? Where's Lando Norris in that? Fernando Alonso also getting some shout-outs. Norris must be at least P3. That is correct to win the championship. First, Lewis. Already that meme guy. I've lost it. I've lost all respect for your prediction. As soon as you start it like that. But we have indeed got your guys' predictions. Shall I share them with you? Do you want to see what over 1,000 people got involved in this weekend's predictions? I think it's the most we've had all season long. Predictably so, because we are getting towards the top of the championship and the crunch time that is in front of us. But over 1,000 Formula One fans decided Max Verstappen would be the winner of this weekend's Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. But Lando Norris would still be on the podium. And I'm going to tell you, it was marginal. It was very, very close. Like, Oscar Piastri came out P2 by quite a distance, I would have to say, considering. George Russell, the points difference in terms of the voting for George Russell P3 versus Lando Norris P3 was marginal. I think the few votes that Lando Norris got for being the winner, there was a few people that did think Lando Norris would go on to win the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. There weren't many people that thought George Russell would go on to win it. So therefore, that kind of tipped Lando Norris onto the podium in terms of the voting that we had. But that is your guys' predictions. You predict Max Verstappen to win, and he's going to make it tricky for the guys behind him. But Oscar Piastri to come out second place, Lando Norris to come out third place, and therefore Lando Norris to be the world champion. Your positive surprise was Kimi Antonelli, although dropping out in qualifying a little bit earlier than you would have expected yesterday. Maybe we're going to see another like Vegas-style run from Kimi Antonelli, right? Where he jumps at the top and hopefully gets in the mix. You know, he could certainly be one of those drivers that causes a little bit of a headache for the two McLaren guys or possibly even Max Verstappen. You guys still assuming that the best team over the weekend will be McLaren. I think that's fair. Both of them right up there, whereas you look at the other big teams, Yuki Tsunoda kind of down the way for Red Bull. Both of the Ferraris a little bit further down the pecking order than they would have liked to have been. And similar with Mercedes, Kimi Antonelli falling by the wayside as well. So best team being McLaren, I can completely understand. And therefore you're thinking that the flop team will be Ferrari. They've been down there quite a few times this season. And Lewis Hamilton's form of late, not helping out. Not helping out at all at the moment, is it? But Lewis Hamilton dragging the Ferrari team into the flop team category. And again, it was very close to being Lewis Hamilton being your struggle driver of the weekend. But just about Lando Norris pipped the vote. I think it was 33%, sort of 35% or something between Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris, which is insane considering there are 18 other drivers to pick from. But those two sort of beating out the rest. And Lando Norris, you think it's going to be a tough afternoon for him, but he will still be able to go on and win this championship. Last race before your exam. What a beautiful thing. I mean, it's the last race of the season. Last race of 2025. This is where it ends. What are my thoughts on Yuki T-boning Lando in turn one? it's going to have to come from a very long way back if he's going to be able to even get close to Lando Norris going into turn 1. Unless he's going to do it later on in the Grand Prix where maybe he pits really early and then hopefully Lando Norris comes out. No, he'd have to pit really late, wouldn't he? He needs to stay within like 20 seconds of Lando Norris, right? Then when Lando Norris pits, he needs to hold him up in that final sector, Sergio Perez-esque, to allow a few more drivers to maybe jump Lando Norris in the pit stops. I think that's the only way Yuki Tsunoda plays any kind of role in this, to be honest with you. But I think when it comes to the championship, we're going to be seeing some very interesting decisions from all 3 of the drivers that are a part of it. And to be honest, we can speculate now. We will speculate. But until we go through turn 1 and we kind of see who shakes out in front, I think it's very difficult to judge where they are all going to sit and be. At what time does the race start? We are about 45 minutes away from the race start, just a little bit over. Do I like Lando? I do. I'm a McLaren fan. I would like one of the 2 McLaren drivers to win the championship. That's what I've been saying all season. I wasn't too fussed about which of the 2 McLaren drivers it was. Do I have slight preference over Lando? Maybe, because he's been there a bit longer. He's been with the team for more time. Kind of represents this rebuild at McLaren. You know, you look at Zach Brown coming in, Andrea Stella coming in, then a little bit, well, quite a bit later than that. But you look at the way the team has been built. Lando Norris has been a part of that since the beginning of this new era look for McLaren. So I can understand why you'd maybe, even as a McLaren fan, have a little bit of bias towards Lando. I think I maybe do. But I would also absolutely love Oscar Piastri to win the championship as well. So more than happy for either of those 2 to come out on top. Do I want to become an F1 commentator in the future? Wouldn't say no. Was never the goal, but maybe. Shall we delve into it a little bit further then? In terms of the strategy. Oh, there's the stream. Oh, there's another. I was going to say this. In terms of the strategy, we're looking at 58 laps of the Yas Marina circuit. The C3 hard compound tire, C4 medium compound tire, and C5 soft compound tire. I was thinking it was going to be a 1-stop, but there's a few kind of murmurings that it might end up being a 2-stop strategy over the course of this Grand Prix. I'm not so sure how much I believe that until we start to see some of the tyre degradation through the first couple of stints. But I do think it's going to end up being a 1-stop. Hard compound tyres. It's been a weird one, hasn't it? Recently, the hard compound tire has not been the one to be on. You know, you look at the medium compound tire really coming to the fore for Verstappen, say, in Brazil, where he just absolutely rattled through the field and actually got a little bit lucky with that puncture, went onto the medium compound tire earlier than expected and absolutely ramped through the field. And then similar last time out, the medium tire was the one to be on in Qatar, wasn't it? Despite the fact that it was a 25-lap mandated pit stop. I think the medium tire will play such a pivotal role in this Grand Prix. And then it's sort of, do people even bother to go onto the hard compound tire? I suppose with the degradation being higher than they were expecting, maybe the hard compound tire comes into play. But we have also seen some soft compound tire running during races recently, which is not the norm. Like normally when you see a Formula One race, it is a mixture of hard and medium tires used for the race, and the soft compound tires usually just a qualifying tire. But we have started to see it. I don't know. I think, again, the strategy will be dictated by what happens coming out of turn 1 and who is in the lead, and whether or not we're going to see like a Max Verstappen DRS train for the first chunk of the race whilst he tries to back Lando Norris into the rest of the pack. We could also see a Fernando Alonso train. We've seen a lot of those this season. He's starting in 6th place and will be desperate to hold on to those points. So he then opens up a little bit of a gap in 6th place to the cars behind, especially because Aston Martin are still fighting for things in the Constructors' Championship. I think it could be a very interesting strategic battle between not just the top 3 that are going to be the focus, of course, but the rest of the teams out there as well. In terms of the narrative going into this, then there's been a bit of a weird sort of inkling that Lando Norris has not been the best driver of the year. And it's interesting because I think Max Verstappen has been the best driver on the grid this season. But then I actually looked at the stats for it, and all three of the top three drivers have won 7 races this season. So George Russell with the other 2 wins this year in Canada and Vegas. No, Singapore. I think I've done that twice where I thought George Russell has won Vegas. He's actually won Singapore. All of them have 7 wins to their name. Lando Norris has 7 pole positions. Max Verstappen now has 8 pole positions, where Oscar Piastri only has 6. But you can see the consistency that Lando Norris has also brought. 17 podiums compared to 15 and 14. 8 second-place finishes, which is massive in comparison to the 4 of Oscar Piastri and the 5 of Max Verstappen. It just goes to show that, okay, yes, he hasn't been able to win more races than his title rivals, but he's more consistently been second best when he hasn't been on the top step of the podium. And then the 3rd place finishes, Oscar Piastri's been in the mix maybe a little bit more there. Top 5 finishes I thought was interesting, that Oscar Piastri has the most top 5 finishes out of these 3 drivers, but it's only by a little bit. It's 19 for Lando and 19 for Max Verstappen as well. They've been pretty consistently inside of the top 5. Apart from disqualifications and, in Max Verstappen's case, smashing into the side of George Russell in Spain, which cost him 11 points, remember? So I think it's an interesting narrative that Max Verstappen has been by far and away the best driver in Formula 1 this year. And I guess you could argue that he's also not had the best car this year. But I also think that Lando Norris has put in some incredible performances. I think Oscar Piastri has also, especially in the first half of the season, really stepped into the role of, being a driver that will be in championship battles for the foreseeable future. It's only his 3rd season in Formula 1, remember? We're looking at an Oscar Piastri who's still very early on in his Formula 1 career. I think it's actually a lot closer, and hence why we're going into the final race of the season with the championship battle still on the line. I think it's actually been very close between these 3 drivers in terms of who's had the best performances over the course of the season. For me, it is still Max, but those people that argue Lando Norris has been the worst champion that we'll see in a while, or Oscar Piastri is the worst champion that we'll see in a while, I don't know how much I get behind that narrative personally, if I am honest. I think that's a little bit of a misnomer. I think it's just come to the fore recently because of how Max Verstappen has closed the gap to the title rivals over the course of the season. Like, you look at Imola here, Max Verstappen, that incredible overtake on Oscar Piastri to win that Grand Prix. But since Imola, actually, Max Verstappen has kind of ebbed away from the championship lead. Canada was a little bit of a jump in the fact that McLaren just had a pretty terrible weekend in Canada. Obviously, Lando Norris hitting into the back of his teammate. But then from there, Austria obviously dropped a massive amount of points to Max Verstappen being hit by Kimi Antonelli. Nothing that he could have done about that. But since that point up until the Netherlands, he really did fall away from the pack. You can see that opening just getting wider and wider and wider for Max Verstappen as sort of the second third of the season played out in front of him. And even in his home Grand Prix in the Netherlands, kind of 205 points to Oscar Piastri's 309 points. It was, Max Verstappen even said himself the championship was pretty much done. He's not thinking about it, etc., etc. But the way he has come back, and the fact that he's come back whilst not winning that many Grand Prix, I say not that many Grand Prix. It's not like he's won every single Grand Prix in the second half of the season. He went back to back in Italy and Azerbaijan, but didn't win in Singapore, came second to George Russell, won in the United States, but didn't win in Mexico, didn't win in Brazil. Like, he hasn't, ramped through every single race, winning every single one of them. He still had to really work for those points, and it hasn't been absolutely destined that Max Verstappen is going to win every single Grand Prix and therefore jump in terms of the points every single race. It's actually been sort of a slow, monotonous climb for Max Verstappen where he's had to do it the hard way. And then you look at the flip side of that, where you can also argue McLaren have just thrown away points. Like, you look at the Vegas weekend, here, where like Lando Norris comes into it on 390, leaves it on 390, where Verstappen comes into it 341 and leaves on, can't even get Max Verstappen. It's 366. It was the same as Oscar Piastri, but as you can see, like, Max Verstappen's rise in that second half of the season has just been insane. Depressing for Ferrari fans. Yeah, I don't think looking at this is a fun look for Ferrari fans, is it? You can just see again the way in which everybody has kind of escaped away from you. Even George Russell sort of escaping away from Charles Leclerc in the championship as the season has progressed. Like, Charles Leclerc's never really looked that close to catching up to George Russell. You could maybe argue in Monaco, where it was an absolute disaster weekend for Russell, or even Spain, where Russell had the issues with Max Verstappen, you could say. But then in Canada, he went on to win that race, and the two victories for George Russell have just completely separated him out from the rest of the guys behind. That's why we do have that top four. It's the four drivers who have won Grand Prix sitting in the top four in the championship. And then it's kind of everybody else. When does the race start? We are 37 minutes away. I think he is Oscar. I think we just have similar builds. Very sad as a Ferrari fan. Yeah, it's not good reading if you're a Ferrari fan, is it? Not good reading at all. Who will win Abu Dhabi according to me? I think Max Verstappen has kind of got the pace. He was saying that the qualifying pace he showed yesterday versus the race pace he might have today might not quite be the same. But if you look at the qualifying laps, a 122.207, 0.2 of a second quicker than Lando Norris. And you look at how closely packed together the field has been this season. I think I mentioned it in Q2 yesterday, where you look at the 5 drivers that dropped out in Q2, they were all within a 10th of making it through to Q3. That is the finest of margins that mean you start inside of the point scoring places or you start 15th, which is a huge drop in terms of the grid and a long way to crawl yourself back up into those point scoring positions. So I think, looking at the fact that Max Verstappen was then able to find an extra 0.2 of a second was ridiculous, and just shows the quality of the man, shows that he is, I don't even know, subhuman in some way, or above human. An alien is Max Verstappen. Like, just the way in which he found time was insane. Down to turn 1, he'd already found himself like 10 kilometers an hour compared to the McLaren car of Lando Norris behind. So the fact he was able to jump into that and find that speed is just insane. And that gained him just under a 10th of a second straight away. Lando then actually sort of closed the gap a little bit through turn 3, but Max Verstappen's straight line speed, even though Lando got the better launch out of turn 5, Verstappen's better straight line speed down towards turn 6 carried more speed through turn 6 and turn 7. And I think this was actually where Max Verstappen got this victory in terms of pole position. Like, you look at how much speed and how much time Lando Norris loses through turn 6 and turn 7. And I implore you to look at the onboards in the next sort of 35 minutes before the Grand Prix. Max Verstappen, like, almost so smooth through turn 6 and turn 7. It's like he's dancing with the Red Bull car. Like, the way in which he slides it left and then right, it's one fluid motion. And that's what you want when you're inside of a Formula One car. You want it to be almost effortless to put the car. Obviously, it's not. They are incredibly talented drivers, and Max Verstappen being possibly the most talented of them all. But just the way he makes it look effortless through turn 6 and turn 7 sort of glides that Red Bull car around, versus Lando Norris, who takes a little bit too much curb on turn 6 entry and therefore bobbles the car around a little bit, bounces off of the curbs, and then as he goes through turn 7 is sort of fighting the car a little bit more than Max Verstappen is able is having to do, and therefore loses that time in that portion of the lap. And turn 6, turn 7 was where Lando Norris ended up 3.5 tenths down on Max Verstappen. Bit better launch out of the corner. Maybe just a bit better of an upshift, a little tick of something from Verstappen. Not sure what happened there. Maybe just missed an upclick or something along those lines. But we have then Lando Norris gaining a little bit, still 0.2 of a second down though. Max Verstappen again, just the straight line speed of the Red Bull car. And I think they've set this up deliberately, right? You know, you look at the going down in towards turn 6, going down in towards turn 9 with the DRS. And remember, this was the lap that Max Verstappen didn't get the toe from Yuki Tsunoda. So this is just straight line speed advantage. The Red Bull has that. And I think that bodes well if Lando Norris does manage to take the lead off the line. Max Verstappen still has the straight line speed advantage, I think, to maybe go for a move back on Lando Norris again, down towards turn 6 or down towards turn 9, especially if the DRS becomes activated, obviously a lap into the Grand Prix, and he's able to continue on with that. Lando Norris did close the gap a little bit through the final sector. A little bit sloppy, maybe you could say, from Lando Norris to then sort of make another mistake through turn 12. Got a little bit back onto it. Was better through turn 15 and turn 16, but by then the damage had been done. And Lando Norris ending up 0.2 of a second adrift of Max Verstappen's lap time. Like, he is phenomenal. He's phenomenal. Like, the lap time is brilliant. Turn 6 and turn 7, like, just go and watch those two corners from Max Verstappen. It is beautifully elegant inside of that Red Bull car. But Lando Norris, 0.2 off the pace and not able to live with Max Verstappen in that one. Will he be able to live with Max Verstappen for 58 laps of the Yas Marina circuit? That's what we're going to wait and see. We are half an hour before the start of the Grand Prix. Let's take a look at what you guys are all here for. The championship board, 23 races out of 24 completed. Lando Norris goes in 408 points to the good, 396 for Verstappen, 392 for Oscar Piastri. It is a three-way title battle where Verstappen needs a 12-point swing, Piastri needs a 16-point swing. And as we looked at the statistics earlier, they have all got 7 wins to their name. So whoever wins the Grand Prix will also have 8 wins to their name, and therefore more wins than the other 2 championship rivals. So on countback, say Lando Norris and Max Verstappen end up on the same points after this Grand Prix. If Max Verstappen wins it, I don't know though. Can they end up on the same points? No, because there isn't a 13-point place. But anyway, you know what I mean. Whoever wins the Grand Prix will have the most wins across the Formula One season, which then just goes to show again that consistency that Lando Norris has had, where he's just been able to, even when he's not winning the Grand Prix, make sure he's on the podium every single time almost, make sure he finishes second place. Lando Norris has that points advantage over the other 2. Am I streaming the race? We will be. We'll be live streaming throughout the entire Grand Prix. Don't you worry. We'll keep you updated on everything that is happening. But beyond that, there are a few other battles still to play out. Isaac Hadjar is only a couple of points ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. You'd say that 13-point gap to Carlos Sainz after his 2 podium places in the second half of the season means that Carlos Sainz likely to hold on to 9th place in the Drivers' Championship and confirm that kind of best of the rest double position for the Williams team in 8th and 9th. But Hadjar versus Hülkenberg versus Alonso, still a battle I'm interested to see play out. Behrman also is trying to hold off Liam Lawson for 13th place in the championship. Yuki Tsunoda might have an eye on trying to get past Liam Lawson in the Drivers' Championship as well and not be the least or the lowest rated in terms of the Red Bull drivers as well. Have I been looking at the predictions by Formula J-Bone? I have not. I quite like J-Bone. I've reached out to him a couple of times and never heard anything back. So just no. Then Esteban Ocon down to 32 points. Again, only a point behind Yuki Tsunoda. Lance Stroll on the same. So there is still a few places up for grabs in terms of the Drivers' Championship, certainly. And even more so in the Constructors' Championship as well. McLaren have won it. They have almost double the points of everybody else. Mercedes also pretty much guaranteed second place. In fact, I think statistically, oh no, I suppose Red Bull can just about, but they would need both Mercedes cars to have an absolute nightmare showing. I think That's pretty much guaranteed. Red Bull, Ferrari, Williams, that seems like locked in for the top 5, which is unlike last year where we did have a battle for the Constructors' Championship coming into the final race of the season. And then it's a little bit more complicated. Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, Haas. You would say they're a little bit too far apart. 12 points, 7 points, and then another 5 points down to Stake Sauber as well. But there is an opportunity for a little bit of a shake-up there, and it does mean a lot to those teams. It's tens of millions of pounds that they are fighting for every single Constructors' Championship position. So I don't think Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso will be looking at that 6th place and going, maybe we can up that to, well, they'd need to up it to almost a podium place, really, to get enough points on the board because Lance Stroll starts in 15th. But again, Aston Martin will be eyeing up as many points as possible to try and get past Racing Bulls and also to defend themselves from Haas behind as well. Alpine at the bottom never gets old. I mean, to think, 2022, the start of this regulation cycle, Alpine were actually the 4th fastest team in the sport. They beat McLaren in terms of the Constructors' Championship. That was where they were when they had Ocon and Alonso as their driver pairing. Alpine have gone through a real up and down over the course of this era of Formula One, haven't they? And it's been more down than up, I would say, inside of the Alpine cars. But they have Gasly and Colapinto. Colapinto yet to score a point this season in Formula One. Starts from 20th place, so unlikely, but is the only driver yet to score a point so far. Maybe he can nab one in the final race of the season. Stroll for P1 in the chaos. I mean, I think we could see like a weird winner if Max Verstappen or Oscar Piastri tries to do something a little bit strange in terms of like forcing Lando Norris's hand a little bit, actually sort of trying to put the championship leader under pressure in an awkward position. Like if Max Verstappen does hold up the rest of everyone, like if he's leading the race going into the 2nd or 3rd lap of the Grand Prix and just starts holding up Lando Norris through the final sector to try and push him backwards into a Russell, a Leclerc, and Alonso to try and get him to drop down to 4th or 5th place, which is what he does need. I could understand, then something weird happens. Maybe Lando pits and then Max Verstappen tries to cover him off by pitting as well or something weird. And we do end up with a Fernando Alonso win or a Charles Leclerc win. It's not outside the realms of possibility, but there would need to be something quite weird happen. There'd need to be some strategic tomfoolery going on between the teams and between those championship rivals for it to not be Verstappen or Norris or Piastri that goes on to win this Grand Prix. Thank you for all the new subs, by the way. We're trying to hit 150,000 subscribers before the end of the season, which, is technically today, but can we count it at the end of the year, maybe? I don't think we'll hit 1,000 subscribers in a day, but you never know. We could give it a go. Let's try and get 1,000 subscribers in this day if we can. And then we can roll on from there. Also, we're trying to hit 750 followers over on Twitch. So if you haven't followed us over on Twitch, and actually if you've got an Amazon Prime, and maybe you're not a Twitch person, but you've got Amazon Prime because Amazon just deliver everything in this world right now. You can use that Amazon Prime completely for free and subscribe to my channel over on Twitch. And all it does is take £5 from Jeff Bezos, who, let's face it, doesn't need it, and puts that £5 in my pocket, who, let's face it, does need it. So if you could head over to Twitch, even if you're over on the YouTube stream, use that Twitch Prime. That would be absolutely sensational. And also hit the follow button whilst you are there. That would be the dream come true. And also hit the like button. Hit all the buttons. All the buttons on all the different platforms. Just hit them. Just like a madman with buttons. Just hitting all the buttons that you possibly can until they are all pressed and green or whatever the like button goes. Blue? Blue? I should know. I'm glad F1 didn't use playoffs. A little bit of outside chat. Here we go then. Shall we look at the permutations? The permutations, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get to the grid of this afternoon, this grid is giving me anxiety. I mean, I've been anxiety for forever. not the dislike. You can't hit the like and the dislike at the same time, I don't think. You've got to pick one or the other. And everyone hits the like button, don't they? The like button is the one. No one hits the dislike button. Why would you dislike this? Open question. But these are the permutations. 20 minutes away from the start of this Grand Prix. Likes equals viewers. Exactly. We need more people in. More viewers coming through the door. More likes, more viewers, more good. But Lando Norris can win this championship by just finishing inside of the top 3. It's where he starts. It's where he's finished most races, remember? He's been on the podium it's been in the top 5 19 times this season. So has been on the podium a good chunk of times, has Lando Norris, and just needs to be on there one more time. He has been the most consistent driver of the year. Argues whether or not he's the best driver of the year, but certainly most consistent in my eyes, and therefore has the championship in his hands going into the final race of the season. For anybody else to win the championship over Lando Norris, they need him to finish outside of the top 3, and then a few other different factors to come into play. So for Max Verstappen to win the championship, he needs to either win the Grand Prix, and for Lando Norris to be P4 or lower. So P4 or lower. Or if Max Verstappen finishes 2nd or 3rd, he needs Lando Norris to be P8 or P9, or of course lower than that, whilst Oscar Piastri not to win the Grand Prix. That's the other problem that Max Verstappen has, is he's not just got to force Lando down the grid, he's got to make sure that in doing so, he doesn't open the door for Oscar Piastri to win the Grand Prix and outscore him this weekend as well. Then for Oscar Piastri to win the Grand Prix, similar kind of deal really. He's got to win, but also hope that somebody forces Lando Norris to finish P6 or lower. Or if he does indeed come 2nd in this Grand Prix, Oscar Piastri, he needs Lando Norris to be at least P10 and for Max Verstappen to be P4 or lower. So realistically, for Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri, if they want to win this championship, they've got to win the Grand Prix and hope Lando Norris shuffles down the order a considerable amount, right? They need to make sure Max Verstappen needs to push Lando Norris down to P4, Oscar Piastri needs to push Lando Norris down to P6. Them the rules that they are playing by this race weekend, and that's the way that they are going to have to try and push Lando Norris. And that's the thing that plays against Lando Norris a little bit more so, I guess, is that he's got 2 drivers that are both trying to push him down the order. Like going into turn 1, Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri are both going to hope that George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, they actually get past Lando Norris. They're going to be pushing him wide. They're going to be pushing him out. They're going to be trying to get rid of him as much as they possibly can and hope that they can let a Mercedes, a Ferrari try and jump through and get into the mix, because that's the only way that Max and Oscar can realistically go on to win this World Championship. They are the permutations, the thing that we will continue to talk about, of course, as the Grand Prix continues. We'll check in on the Drivers' Championship consistently, particularly after the pit stops, and it could be a chaotic end to the Grand Prix. And now I'm getting nervous. I don't know why. Seeing the grid walk now with Martin, it's now hit me that this is going to be the end. Will I be in the next podcast episode? I think I have to be, don't I? Depending on how this goes towards the end of the Grand Prix, I'm not sure if I'd want to be on there. But of course I will be. Of course I will turn up. I'll do my job. And I'll try my best. I'm not sure it's going to be the most fun one in terms of that. 20 minutes until the race? Yes, indeed. We will indeed be live streaming it. We'll be here for the entirety of the Grand Prix and talking through every single possible change. We've hit 749 followers. We're 1 follower away from 750 over on Twitch. could be you. You could be the 750th follower over on Twitch. And we have hit 148,974 subscribers on YouTube. So 26 of you could push us into the 149K. You know, you could be part of that club that pushes us over the 149,000 margin if you hit that subscribe button now. Love the podcast. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We work very hard on it, trying our best. Martin Brundle still wandering down the grid. And shall we talk about the grid? We haven't actually touched upon the starting grid for this race as of yet. Ooh. I've clicked the wrong one, but it is what it is. This is what we will be looking at for the Grand Prix. Let me see if I can find the actual grid one. There we are. So we will be seeing Max Verstappen lead the race. I was going to say going into turn one, but possibly not even going into turn one, depending on how it goes. Running off of the grid. Maybe, you know, maybe he stalls the car. Maybe he just falls out of championship contention. Does like what Isaac Hadjar did in Formula 2 last year. And just stands still while everybody else comes past him. Wouldn't that be the dream? Maybe not if you're a Max Verstappen fan. If you're a McLaren fan, it would most certainly be the dream. I'm very much looking forward to, hopefully, Max Verstappen falling off a cliff. Scott Hadley with a super chat. Doing a great job. Thank you so much. £20. 20 human Great British pounds. Don't know why I said human. Thank you so much. That is insane. Thank you, Scott. But Max Verstappen leading the race, at least whilst the lights go out. Lando Norris starts beside him, second on the grid. I think being on the outside, going into turn one, are we going to see a lunge from Lando? Does he go for it? Or does he just think about the fact that actually, second place is fine? You know, second place is okay. Does he want to go for the victory? Does he want to cement this championship win? Or does he play the long game and go, you know what? In 20 years' time, people won't remember whether or not I won this Grand Prix, but they will remember whether or not I won the championship. You know, you look back, Schumacher, I'm sure that everybody remembers he's a 7-time world champion. I don't think you can remember every single victory he had, right? Or every single victory he did not have. You know, it's the championships that matter. It's the championships that cement your legacy. Therefore, Lando Norris needs to be maybe just a little bit careful about where he positions himself going in towards turn one. And then we have Oscar Piastri on the complete flip side of that, by the way. You need to think about Oscar Piastri and the fact that he is absolutely not only going to go for a move on Lando, but also needs to go for a move on Max. He needs to win this Grand Prix, does Oscar Piastri, as we saw in the permutations. Love saying permutations today. As we saw in the permutations, we know that realistically, the only way that Oscar Piastri wins this championship is by winning this Grand Prix. So on the flip side, where Lando Norris maybe is going to be a little bit cautious, we've got Oscar Piastri, who is going to be going head first into turn one. And we saw the balance between Verstappen and Piastri and the fact that last year they bounced into one another going into turn one. And it did indeed cause Oscar Piastri to spin, ruined his afternoon, also sent Max Verstappen out. Like, we could see Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri collide into turn one again. Like, it happened last year, could happen this year, and that plays perfectly for Lando Norris if he has taken a little bit more of a defensive line going into the first corner. It depends what Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri kind of gauge as the most important thing right now. I think Piastri also needs to think about the fact that he needs to get ahead of Lando Norris to have the benefit of the better pit stops. We know that the leading McLaren gets to choose pit stops and how they happen. That's how the whole Monza issue came about, because Lando Norris literally said to Oscar Piastri to pit when he did. And then it played against Oscar in that case, because he then had to give the position back. So when you are the leading McLaren, you do get the benefit when it comes to pit stops. They have also said that if they need to play the team game and deliver some team orders, they will do this weekend. Again, will Piastri listen to those team orders? We'll have to wait and see. But that top three, Piastri's got to go all out. Lando Norris, I don't know whether it's better to be aggressive or conservative. We know that when we've seen an aggressive Lando Norris, it hasn't always gone amazingly for him. Think about the opening at Vegas, where he tried to be super aggressive to Verstappen, overcooked it, sent himself wide, and then got disqualified from the race anyway. But by the by, still kind of gave it up when it went down in towards turn one. And then Max Verstappen, the same, sort of needs to be super aggressive, but also needs to make sure that Lando Norris is in that mix with Piastri, with Russell, and so that they've got the opportunity of possibly going for an overtake. Like George Russell in fourth place is also an interesting factor in all of this. George Russell wants to go on and win another Grand Prix. George Russell doesn't really have a dog in this fight. Okay, probably prefers Lando Norris to Max Verstappen as a human being, you would guess, considering the interactions that the drivers have had over the course of their Formula One careers together. But at the same time, George Russell is just going to try and finish as high as possible. You know, George Russell is not going to move out of the way of Lando Norris on the final lap of the Grand Prix. He will continue to race on and will want to be ahead of the two McLaren cars and will want to be ahead of Lando Norris if he can come the checkered flag. So we've also got the fact that George Russell's right there behind. And George Russell has ruined some people's weekends this year. You know, you look, actually, Max Verstappen has kind of been the downfall of more of what George Russell has done over the course of this season. George Russell winning in Canada. Had George Russell not won in Canada, that would have actually been a max victory, which would have got him another 7 points. Singapore, where George Russell won, had that not been George Russell winning, it would have been a max victory. So, like, George Russell has actually taken 2 victories away from Max Verstappen over the course of this season, and 14 points, therefore, away from Max Verstappen this season, if you look at it like that. So Max could have been leading the championship had George Russell not won those 2 races and not, you know, been the fastest driver inside of that Mercedes car. So it's a weird one, isn't it? The fact that actually George Russell could play another huge role in this championship and has played a huge role in this championship over the course of the entirety of 2025, despite never really being in the championship battle. You know, George Russell has never been properly in contention for winning this season. The Mercedes car has never been that consistent, but he has been incredible when it's come to just delivering a little bit of drama when required. You know, George Russell's been right in there. George secretly loves Max. We all know it. Well, maybe. I think it's a love-hate relationship, isn't it? I don't think they hate each other as much as it maybe comes across, but I think they're just both incredibly competitive. And unfortunately, as I've just mentioned, George Russell has a way of getting involved in scenarios, and his ability to drive, like his incredible determination, his incredible consistency inside of the Mercedes car, and his talent means that actually George Russell, possibly the second best driver on the grid. And, you know, Max Verstappen kind of knows that. And therefore they do bump heads every now and then because they are the 2 best drivers on the grid. And they're both fighting for positions that matter. They're fighting for podiums. They're fighting for points really often, which means they do collide into one another and bounce off one another quite a bit. Charles Leclerc then starts on the 3rd row of the grid with Fernando Alonso. Of course, Charles Leclerc Ferrari now. Alonso ex-Ferrari, but Aston Martin at the moment, possibly going into his final season in Formula One in 2026, is the Spaniard. He'll be hoping to kind of jump a couple of places in terms of the driver's standings. It's been a weird season for both Charles Leclerc and Fernando Alonso, you could say. You know, you could argue that both of them have had actually pretty good seasons, but haven't been delivered a car that's been overly successful. Charles Leclerc, a few podiums here and there for Ferrari, hasn't been able to win a Grand Prix for Ferrari this year, which I think is a damning indictment considering how competitive Charles Leclerc was last year and the fact he was able to go on and win a few Grand Prix in the Ferrari car in 2024. But by the by, you know, Ferrari season's kind of over. They're going to end up 4th in the Constructors' Championship behind a Red Bull car that only had 1 driver. So it's not been great for Ferrari. It's not been great for Charles Leclerc. And similarly, Fernando Alonso feels like he's delivered all of the pace that Aston Martin car has kind of delivered him. Just hasn't been as much pace as you'd maybe been expecting from that Aston Martin car. You got to remember, Fernando Alonso was picking up podiums for Aston Martin just a couple of seasons ago. It hasn't been that long since that start of the 2023 season where Fernando Alonso was looking at the possibility of maybe getting that 33rd win in Formula One. Now feels like an age ago, but it was only 2 seasons between a few second and third place finishes to now sort of really battling for points and not even finishing best of the rest in terms of the Drivers' Championship, in terms of his position now, Fernando Alonso. Gabriel Bortoleto starts in 7th place. It's kind of been a hidden gem, I think, over this season. I know he's sitting right at the bottom of the driver's standings on 19 points, even behind an Alpine of Pierre Gasly. Remember, though, Gasly has a lot more experience, and Gasly's actually qualified very well this season. 10 Q3 appearances for Pierre Gasly is a lot better than a lot of the other midfield drivers. But by the by, Gabriel Bortoleto starting 7th place, again, has a lot to fight for there, because can jump ahead of Gasly in terms of the driver's standings, can maybe close the gap and just end the season on a high, which would be a really lovely thing for Gabriel Bortoleto to do. Maybe I'm a little bit biased. Have I become a Gabriel Bortoleto fan? Yes, I think I have. Esteban Ocon starts in 8th place. Again, Esteban Ocon has a lot to prove inside of that Haas car, and you're only as good as your last race in Formula One, and when the last race is the last race of the season, you can kind of carry a lot of momentum through the summer break, through the winter break, and I think Esteban Ocon needs a positive. I think he's been outdone by Ollie Behrman pretty consistently over the course of this season. Certainly the second half of the season, Ollie Behrman has been phenomenal. And Esteban Ocon almost needs to remind people of why he's still there. You know, he's a very consistent, if not quite the highest quality driver, but has the ability to put in those performances where he does pick up podiums and he does pick up really solid point scoring finishes. I think he needs to do that one last time before the end of the season to sort of remind us of that. Isaac Hadjar, possibly the rookie of the season for a lot of people, sits in 9th place, is obviously getting that step up to Red Bull. It's his last chance in this Racing Bulls car to show why he has been given that opportunity to jump up into the Red Bull seat. So I think Isaac Hadjar also has a lot to fight for in 9th place, particularly because the man he is replacing, Yuki Tsunoda, is just behind him, and Yuki Tsunoda is going to want to finish above Isaac Hadjar in this final race of the season, right? If he finishes below Hadjar, gets outdone by Isaac Hadjar again, it's a damning indictment for Yuki Tsunoda. But if he can have one last flash in the pan, really good race, he has been really good in Abu Dhabi before as Yuki Tsunoda, I think then we have the opportunity to go, right, Yuki Tsunoda, you're off the grid for 2026, but where could you slot in for 2027? Is there an opportunity to get back onto the grid in the future? Whereas if it's another kind of drab, pretty underwhelming race, it just doesn't, it leaves a bitter taste, doesn't it, for Yuki Tsunoda? And what has been a very solid Formula One career. We kind of forget Yuki Tsunoda's been on the grid for 5 seasons. Not a lot of drivers get 5 seasons in Formula One. Like, that is an exclusive club that Yuki Tsunoda is in. Like, he's got over 100 Grand Prix starts in Formula One. That is impressive. Like, that is impressive all in of itself, and deserves a lot of praise, Yuki Tsunoda, just for that. But wants to end it on a high, I think, and will want to go out with a little bit more emphasis than a drab point scoring finish, possibly for Red Bull. He wants to get in amongst it and maybe even help Max Verstappen to win his 5th World Championship. Then behind that, we have Behrman and Sainz, 2 midfield drivers who have really come to life in the second half of the season and will certainly be wanting to finish the second half of the season with a point scoring finish. So they're starting 11th and 12th, but will have a lot of emphasis on going forwards if they possibly can in this Grand Prix. Liam Lawson and Kimi Antonelli almost the same. Antonelli had a really tough middle part of the season. Liam Lawson knowing that he is now not going back up into the Red Bull team next year and has to sit behind the main Red Bull team once again, despite getting that chance for just 2 races at the beginning. Like Lawson and Antonelli have a lot to fight for in 13th and 14th place as well, going into the end of their first full seasons in the sport. Lance Stroll in 15th place, Lewis Hamilton in 16th place. There's a lot of, quality there in terms of those two drivers, a lot of experience there in terms of those two drivers, particularly Lewis Hamilton, although he does feel like he's kind of given up on the end of the season. Alex Albon is the best of the rest driver this year. He's going to finish 8th in the Drivers' Championship, so we'll want to finish the season better for Williams than a 17th place. Nico Hülkenberg starts in 18th, and the two Alpines start in 19th and 20th place. Goodness gracious me. Shall we go to the slightly more detailed board? Are we ready and raring to go? We are 4 minutes away from the start of this Grand Prix. Once more, I'm just going to say thank you to everybody who has supported the channel over the course of this 2025 season. If you have subscribed to the channel, if you've hit the like button on this stream, or if you've even just watched any of the videos on the channel in the past, I massively, massively appreciate it. We have absolutely smashed the 750 followers on Twitch. I think we're now up to 750. And how are we doing in terms of YouTube subs? We have hit that 149,000 barrier. We have jumped over it. I mean, 998 subs and we could hit 150k on this live stream. It's tough. It's not impossible. But if everybody hits the subscribe button, we could get closer to that 150,000 subscribers. Final rundown on the grid, just for those guys joining us now. Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, your front three in the championship are your front three heading into this one. George Russell, 4th in the championship, starts 4th in the race as well. Charles Leclerc, similarly, has a 5th place in the Drivers' Championship right now, and 5th place on the grid for Abu Dhabi. Then it's Fernando Alonso starting on the 3rd row of the grid alongside the Ferrari of Leclerc. Gabriel Bortoleto and Esteban Ocon starting 7th and 8th place. Isaac Hadjar and Yuki Tsunoda making an all Red Bull powered final row inside of the points. And then Ollie Behrman and Carlos Sainz, the two drivers that have really jumped to the forefront of people's minds and memories in this second half of the season. Both put in some incredible performances, with Carlos Sainz even picking up 2 podiums over the course of this season. It's been phenomenal from them. They start in 11th and 12th place. Lawson and Antonelli start in 13th and 14th. Lance Stroll and Lewis Hamilton 15th and 16th. Alex Albon starts in 17th place. Nico Hülkenberg in 18th. Gasly and Colapinto, the two Alpine cars, at the back of the pack. Oh my goodness me. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Round 24 of the 2025 season. 408 points for Lando Norris. All he needs is a podium finish to guarantee himself his first world championship. A 12-point swing for Max Verstappen would see him win a incredible 5th championship in a row, equaling the record of Michael Schumacher, who is the only other driver to also win 5 Drivers' World Championships back to back to back to back to back in Formula One. And he has done an insane job, closed down a 104-point deficit over the last 8 races in this season. And then Oscar Piastri, the man who led the championship from Saudi Arabia, round 5 of the Formula One season, all the way up until the Mexican Grand Prix just a few races ago, sits in 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship. 16-point swing required for Oscar Piastri to go away with the Drivers' World Championship. In his 3rd season in Formula One, it would be an absolutely ridiculous thing for Oscar Piastri to be able to achieve. George Russell, the man who has been in the mix. He's won a couple of Grand Prix this year as George Russell. He'll be looking for one final win before the regulation change, which he thinks is going to be the thing that propels him into possibly being a championship contender with Mercedes in the future. Could he end this season on a high? We will see as we get underway for the formation lap here in Abu Dhabi. The final formation lap of the season. Is anyone feeling hot? I am boiling right now. I'm going to... Oh my God, thank you so much for the super chat. How much do you want to bet that manufacturer's last lap fiasco similar to 2021? Let's not. let's please not think about that until we get there. It is medium tyres for Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. It is a hard compound tyre start for Oscar Piastri. Medium compound tyres for the rest of the top 10 until you hit Yuki Tsunoda, who starts in 10th place on the hard compound tyre. Behrman, Sainz, Lawson on the mediums, Antonelli and Stroll on hards. Hamilton, Albon and Hulkenberg opting for the soft compound tyre to begin this Grand Prix. And the medium tyre on Gasly and Colapinto. Likely to be a one-stop strategy throughout this Grand Prix, it has to be said. Few people have said maybe it'll end up being a two-stop, depending on how things shake out in terms of the championship order. I think a lot of this, though, will end up being a one-stop. We saw that the two-stop just is a little bit awkward on these tyres, and the Formula One cars are able to hold onto their tyres a lot better this season compared to seasons past. Why does Alonso already have one lap? He completed one lap on those tyres during free practice. So, same with Lance Stroll. They are both starting on a slightly scrubbed set of medium and hard compound tyres. You can do that because it actually makes the tyre a little bit more durable, takes a little bit of the life out of the tyre in terms of raw speed, but does make the tyre more durable over the course of a race by putting in one heat cycle through that tyre. So they do one lap on the tyre effectively in free practice to just give it a little bit more durability going into the Grand Prix. Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll at Aston Martin deciding that that is the way that they want to move forwards. But let's face it, we're really looking at the top end here as Max Verstappen makes his way around turn 16 and leads the 20 cars. He's done that a lot of times in Formula One as Max Verstappen, a four-time world champion inside of that Red Bull car. Thinking back to 2023 when he absolutely dominated the field and he takes his spot on the grid on the outside of turn 1. Lando Norris will have the inside line going into that first corner, but starts a little bit further back. Oscar Piastri will be looking across at his teammate straight away. George Russell also slots into his grid spot. Take a deep breath, ladies and gentlemen. We are a few cars away from the start of this final race of the season. Sainz and Lawson take their positions. Just looking at Colapinto coming around turn 16 now. He is the final driver that needs to come to a stop. All 20 race cars have to be completely stationary before the starting procedure for the Formula One Grand Prix can start. The medical car takes its place at the back of the grid. A green flag is waved. And we can have 5 red lights between us and the start of the end. Here we are then, the 2025 championship battle gets underway and Max Verstappen comes across to fight with Lando Norris straight away and gets himself ahead of Lando Norris straight off the bat. Oscar Piastri tries to get around the outside of his teammate and put himself in a position to take second place, but he can't quite yet. Max Verstappen then still leads this Grand Prix. Norris and Piastri behind. Charles Leclerc has jumped up to 4th place. George Russell has dropped a couple of positions backwards to 6th place on the grid. Oh my goodness, and there's someone towards the back, I think it's a Haas car, going for a move down in towards turn 5. Isaac Hadjar has managed to move past Gabriel Bortoleto. Bortoleto comes back at him to take 7th place once again. Hadjar into 8th, Ocon 9th, Tsunoda in 10th. It's Antonelli has dropped back a couple of positions as well as Lando Norris has a little look at Max Verstappen through turn 6, but isn't able to do it this time around. Fernando Alonso also having a tussle with Charles Leclerc, the Ferrari and the Aston Martin, side by side through the chicane. Max Verstappen continues on though, down towards turn 9, and still has the lead of this Grand Prix as Oscar Piastri tries to go around the outside of Lando Norris, and Oscar Piastri's going to go for the move and gets that move done. Oscar Piastri up into 2nd place and around the outside of Lando Norris. Piastri P2, Lando Norris P3, but still good enough. Charles Leclerc then 4th, Alonso 5th, Russell is 6th, Bortoleto 7th, Isaac Hadjar is in 8th place, Esteban Ocon 9th, and Yuki Tsunoda 10th are currently our point scoring position cars. Max Verstappen leads the cars round turn 1 and enters turn 1 of lap 2 of this Grand Prix. So Verstappen, Piastri, Norris is our top 3. Verstappen has held onto the lead. Piastri has been able to move past his teammate up into second place. We did, of course, have the McLaren team say that team orders will be used if required during this Grand Prix. But will Piastri listen to them is the other question. At the moment, Lando Norris would win this World Championship by 2 points to Max Verstappen. 2 points that crucially came after Kimi Antonelli made a mistake in Qatar last weekend. Max Verstappen then goes down towards turn 6, still leading, and Lando Norris needs to stay within DRS here. But Charles Leclerc is going to have DRS to the McLaren car ahead of him. Does Charles Leclerc go for a move on Lando Norris as we go down towards turn 9? The DRS of the Ferrari car is wide open, but not able to put Lando Norris under too much pressure this time around. Lando Norris still third place for now then. Ollie Behrman and Lewis Hamilton having a little bit of a battle. The two Ferrari-powered cars. Hamilton has actually dropped down to 14th place now. Carlos Sainz is 13th ahead of him. Ollie Behrman 12th. Lawson is up into 11th place. And Esteban Ocon has dropped down to 9th, where Hadjar has jumped up into 8th. So there has been a little bit of a mix around in the midfield as well. But like you guys, I've been focusing mainly on the front 3. Verstappen sets the fastest lap of the race, and it is a tremendously fast lap from Max Verstappen, it has to be said. He now leads Piastri by 2 whole seconds at the front of this Grand Prix. It was a 129.1 from Verstappen, 129.8 from Oscar Piastri behind. Lando Norris, a 129.8 as well, trying to keep himself within DRS range of his teammate, as Charles Leclerc is within that DRS striking distance in his Ferrari. Russell on the radio. Check the brakes. My pedal is going long, so possibly a hydraulic problem inside of the Mercedes car for George Russell. It wasn't an incredible start for George Russell. He ended up dropping backwards a couple of places, started 4th, now 6th. But not getting the feedback from the brake pedal that he'd be hoping for, as we are on lap 3 of this final Grand Prix of the 2025 season. Lewis Hamilton and Alex Albon have both been noted for leaving the track and gaining an advantage, which will now be looked into by the stewards, and no track limits problems for anybody thus far. Max Verstappen still leading this race by a couple of seconds here, but as it stands, Lando Norris would still win the championship. So Max Verstappen's going to have to do something a little bit untoward towards the end of this Grand Prix if he is going to push Lando Norris back a position and play it into his favor. Of course, he does have Yuki Tsunoda, his teammate, down in 10th place. Yuki Tsunoda sitting 8 seconds off the lead of this Grand Prix. So that'll be an interesting factor if they leave Yuki Tsunoda out a little bit longer. He's on the hard compound tyre to maybe slow down Lando Norris later on in this Grand Prix. As it stands, Lando Norris would still win it, and George Russell looks at Fernando Alonso to try and go up a position. In towards turn 6 they go, and George Russell takes back 5th spot from Fernando. George Russell up into 5th and now behind Charles Leclerc. And Leclerc is actually fighting with Lando Norris and actually has closed the gap to Lando Norris pretty well. And Charles Leclerc even has a little look at the back of the McLaren car. Lando Norris having to go into defensive positioning as he goes through turn 9. And Charles Leclerc is having a real go at the back of the McLaren car. And if you're a Max Verstappen fan, you will be enjoying this immensely. Verstappen looking incredibly quick at the front of the pack. 2 seconds ahead of Oscar Piastri already after just 4 laps of this Grand Prix as he heads into lap 5 of it. Charles Leclerc now coming into the 4. And target A plan lap is Lando Norris. We're happy with this as long as you're comfortable. So Lando Norris, I mean, is not very comfortable right now. Charles Leclerc is keeping him on his toes. Although Leclerc has just dropped outside of the DRS range, so might not quite get the DRS advantage that he requires to really have a strike at Lando Norris. Lando Norris able to just gain a little bit in that third sector of the last lap. Verstappen is just continuing to edge himself away from the rest of the pack at the front. Yeah, it was a little bit of a mistake maybe from Lando Norris through the first sector, which allowed Charles Leclerc to just close that gap a little bit more last lap than he has been able to this lap, because Charles Leclerc still 0.5 of a second adrift of Norris as they came through turn 9. It's a wonderful launch from Max Verstappen, covers Lando Norris straight away. Also a brilliant start from Fernando Alonso, and a pretty drab start for George Russell. Russell just doesn't get moving. Alonso and Leclerc away from him as soon as they get down towards turn 1. Then Oscar Piastri, keeping in mind, Piastri having to actually defend from Charles Leclerc on lap 1 down towards turn 5. But then got the opportunity to have a go at his teammate in towards turn 9 and was never given that position back to his McLaren teammate. That's where it stands right now. Verstappen, P1, Piastri, P2, Lando Norris, P3. Verstappen doing everything he can right now to be leading this championship at the end of the Grand Prix. And it was just a little bit of wheel spin from George Russell at the start was why it went wrong for him. And that is frustrating if you're a George Russell fan. Did so well to qualify 4th yesterday. Has been able to get back past Fernando Alonso. But the gap to Charles Leclerc still not quite within DRS range. Charles Leclerc keeping close to the back of his teammate. Oscar Piastri went round the outside of Lando Norris, committed to the move very early on, was right under the rear wing. Lando Norris getting outdone by Oscar Piastri there. A bold move around the outside, it has to be said, from the Australian. Sweeped his way through and into second place. Piastri on the hard compound tyre. Can go longer, actually. That is the other thing that Piastri has now got in his favour. Has the offset in terms of strategy. Max Verstappen, good for now. So Max Verstappen has elongated his lead to 2.5 seconds, and GP just saying, no worries, Lax, let's keep that at the 2.5 second mark. No need to overextend these medium tyres too much at this point in the Grand Prix, especially as Lando Norris is being kept under pressure by Charles Leclerc. Leclerc still within DRS range of the McLaren car ahead of him. And we'll have a little look at the championship in a second once the cars settle in a touch more, because the championship is a little bit closer than Lando Norris would like. Norris would finish the race as it stands on 423 points, 2 points ahead of Max Verstappen. Oscar Piastri would finish on 410 points at the moment, so would be 13 points adrift of the top of the championship come the end of the Grand Prix, if it finishes as it is now. Still a long way to go, though, on lap 7 of 58 here in Abu Dhabi. Charles Leclerc closes in on Lando Norris again, and Lando having to use the better grip of the McLaren car through the final sector to gain a little bit of a gap to the Ferrari behind, because Charles Leclerc is keeping himself in contention. Lando Norris being told that Oscar has been told to pick up the pace a little bit. So Piastri is going to start putting in some quicker lap times, and has indeed. A 129.5 from Oscar Piastri last time around to a 129.8 from Lando Norris. But every Max Verstappen fan has just become a Charles Leclerc fan as well. Charles Leclerc sitting inside DRS range of Lando Norris as they come round turn 5 once again. Lando Norris will have to keep his eyes on his mirrors. Charles Leclerc DRS down towards turn 6 they come. Piastri on the radio. Let's see if we can start putting Verstappen under pressure. So Piastri has been told to really start to turn up the wick inside of that McLaren car. Charles Leclerc is actually a lot closer than he was last time around to the back of Lando Norris. Still not quite within striking distance even with DRS, unless he goes for a move around the outside akin to Oscar Piastri, but doesn't this time around. Charles Leclerc, though, is getting closer to the back of that McLaren. Lando Norris maybe just trying to find a little bit of clean air because it's been stuck behind Oscar Piastri since the start. Piastri has been told to move on a little bit. Has closed the gap from 2.5 seconds to just 2 seconds to Verstappen at the front. But Lando Norris now has a 2-second gap between himself and his teammate. Pit stops around here, usually 20 to 22 seconds, really, under normal circumstances. We're looking at if Max Verstappen pitted now, he would just about be coming out ahead of the likes of Colapinto and Gasly very soon. And here comes Lewis Hamilton into the pits. So does Alex Albon into the pits as well. Nico Hülkenberg deciding to stop a lap earlier too. So some of these back marker runners, seems harsh to say considering it's Lewis Hamilton, but back marker runners deciding to get an early pit stop in, shuffle onto the hard compound tyre, and will maybe go to the end on that hard compound tyre from here. Lewis Hamilton getting the jump on Hülkenberg and staying ahead of the Stake Sauber car, but Alex Albon, I think, has slotted in behind the Stake Sauber. Of course, Sauber, no longer the name of the team going into next season. Audi taking over the reins from 2026 and beyond. Sauber have had quite a few different changes of management over the years, though. Nothing new to them, really. Verstappen, Piastri, Norris still our top three. Charles Leclerc still within DRS range in 4th spot. George Russell back up into 5th, but has dropped a considerable little margin away. George Russell, 2.4 seconds now the gap between Russell and Leclerc. Fernando Alonso then 1.8 seconds adrift in 6th place. Remember, if Oscar Piastri wants to win the championship, he needs Lando Norris to fall all the way back down behind Fernando Alonso in this run. Max Verstappen just needs Charles Leclerc to gain a position to swap around who would come away from this year as the Drivers' World Champion. Piastri was given the go-ahead to sort of speed up a little bit, but Verstappen has just matched him. A 129.4 from Verstappen, 129.5 from Piastri. So even though Piastri has sort of stepped on the gas pedal a touch, Max Verstappen still keeping that gap at 2 seconds at the front of this race. Lando Norris then 1.7 seconds behind that. And Nico Hülkenberg has just put in the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. It just goes to show that he's been in the pits on a fresh set of tyres. And Nico Hülkenberg now on a little bit of a charge. And this goes to show, is it the undercut that is maybe going to work for you or an overcut that could play into your favour? We'll be keeping an eye on Hamilton, Hülkenberg and Albon in terms of what lap times they can put in with their new hard compound tyres. Nico Hülkenberg showing that the hard compound tyre has got some pace. Max Verstappen continues on and is on lap 11 of this Abu Dhabi Grand Prix now. Piastri continues on in 2nd place. Lando Norris 3rd. Charles Leclerc still 4th. George Russell is indeed falling back away from this top 4, though. Oscar Piastri fans will be looking at that and not looking very comfortable indeed. Charles Leclerc, George Russell and Fernando Alonso need to overtake Lando Norris if Piastri's got any hope of winning the championship. He also needs to get past Max Verstappen, so there's quite a lot of things that need to go right for Oscar Piastri from this point. Max Verstappen just needs one change. He needs a helping hand from a Ferrari friend, Charles Leclerc. The man, remember, was fighting for titles with Max Verstappen at the beginning of this era of car. Think back to the beginning of 2022. Charles Leclerc was leading the championship at the beginning of the season, and then the dominance of Max Verstappen began, winning 22, 23, and 24 back to back to back. He now needs Charles Leclerc to do him a favour at the end of this era of Formula One car and overtake so that Max Verstappen can absolutely clean sweep the ground effect era of Formula One from 2022 all the way through to 2025. George Russell, now 3 seconds adrift in 5th place, was struggling with a braking issue inside of his Mercedes car, and it has been a reliability disaster class from Mercedes over the last few race weekends, hasn't it? George Russell has been really struggling inside of that Mercedes, just not able to find the pace inside of that Mercedes car, and has had steering problems, now braking problems, and I think we'll be happy to see the back of this era of Formula One, the era in which he's been able to step up into the main Mercedes team, but not able to fight for championships in the way that he would have been hoping for. Fernando Alonso, best of the rest once again in 6th. Gabriel Bortoleto, it has to be said, holding on to 7th place in his Stake Sauber and actually moving away from Isaac Hadjar. Hadjar running a little bit of a train from 8th place backwards. Hadjar holding up Ocon and Tsunoda behind, and I'm sure the Red Bull team will be giving a little bit of a hurry up to Isaac Hadjar, because they'll be hoping that once Lando Norris pits, he'll be behind one of those Red Bull-powered cars. And Yuki Tsunoda could certainly come into play here. Tsunoda is still 15 seconds off the lead of this race. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris were to pit now, they would come out behind Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda on the hard compound tyre as well. Could certainly play a tactical battle here for the Red Bull team. Helped Max Verstappen to seal pole position yesterday during qualifying at the loss of one of his qualifying laps. And now is stuck in a little bit of a malaise in the midfield as Yuki Tsunoda. But Verstappen leads this Grand Prix. Piastri 2 seconds adrift still. Lando Norris 2.5 seconds. And Lando Norris on the radio saying that his graining is definitely picking up. So the graining on that McLaren car, not to the liking of Lando Norris. As we see that train of cars that is sitting behind Isaac Hadjar make their way through turn 6 and turn 7. Hadjar, Ocon, Tsunoda, Lawson, Behrman, Sainz, Stroll, all in this malaise of cars in the midfield, as Esteban Ocon has a little look at the back of Isaac Hadjar's Racing Bull. Not able to move past the Frenchman for now. Expecting a lot of the medium tyre runners to probably pit around, I would guess, lap 24, probably 25. So that little bit before the halfway point of the Grand Prix, then onto the hard compound tyre. Looking at the hard compound tyre runners to maybe run into the 30s and then swap onto the mediums for the end. Maybe even a soft compound tyre if you're really feeling a little bit frisky. And I think Gasly has peeled into the pits there at the back of the pack. He has indeed. Pierre Gasly moving into the pit lane. I mean, both of the Alpines running at a ridiculously slow speed compared to everybody else this weekend. But Gasly is in for his first stop of the race. So Hamilton, Hülkenberg and Albon, the 3 drivers that stopped early, have made their way past the Alpine once more. And Gasly is going to come out at the back of the pack. Tsunoda, it's kamikaze time. He's nowhere near Lando Norris, unfortunately. He's going to hit into Lando Norris. He'd have to drive backwards. And a 5-second time penalty for Liam Lawson has just been dished out for erratic driving. 5-second time penalty for driving erratically. It was an incident between him and Ollie Behrman at turn 8. And supposedly, Liam Lawson driving too erratically for the stewards and picking up a 5-second penalty. Verstappen, Piastri, Norris still our top 3. As it stands, Lando Norris would win the World Championship by 2 points from, as George Russell boxes. Box, George Russell. Well, this is an interesting turn of events. Russell clearly not happy with the pace on the medium tyre. It's a little bit of a... Well, it's a good stop, actually. 2.3 seconds, but was kind of pulling away a little bit slower than expected. And actually, Isaac Hadjar and Ollie Behrman are in as well. There is a lot of drivers coming in a lot earlier than I was expecting. Are we going to see some two-stop strategies for some of those guys out there? George Russell has just come out ahead of Lewis Hamilton. They maybe decided to do it then so they could still come out in front of these backmarker teams. I think it's because Hamilton and Hulkenberg and Albon have been absolutely flying. Franco Colapinto, now the driver in front of George Russell, who came out in 14th spot. Hadjar and Behrman have actually come out behind Hamilton, Hulkenberg, and Albon. So it does make sense because Hadjar and Behrman were ahead of Hamilton and Hulkenberg and Albon at the beginning of this Grand Prix. They've now pitted and come out behind. And the clean air has been so good for Lewis Hamilton and Nico Hulkenberg. George Russell continues on. Oh, wow. Thank you for the super cut. Piastri overcuts Max and Norris, keeps P3. We'll have to wait and see. There is there was a pit possibility for the McLaren team. Lando Norris has fallen 3.5 seconds off the lead of this Grand Prix. Piastri and Norris, don't know which of the two of them would have wanted to possibly swap, maybe even Lando Norris, but Bortoleto also now comes in. Sauber's last race as they become Audi for next season. Bortoleto was looking at a point scoring position, but is now looking at his teammate Nico Hulkenberg disappear up ahead of him. Bortoleto is going to come out in and around Alex Albon and just ahead of the Williams car, but Bortoleto now has his teammate ahead of him after those pit stops. So actually the early pit stops have really played into the favour of those cars. George Russell has now got a lovely bit of clean air ahead of him because of Franco Colapinto coming in for Alpine. So George Russell up into 12th place and is the leading car of the drivers who have pitted so far. Verstappen, Piastri still leading this Grand Prix. Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc just behind. And again, the McLaren pit wall are there. Fernando Alonso decides to box, and Lando Norris is in. Lando Norris is in. The McLaren team were out once again. I was wondering whether it was going to be Piastri or Norris. It is indeed. Lando Norris comes in. So does Charles Leclerc to cover off Lando Norris coming into the pits, and Fernando Alonso too. So those drivers are a little bit worried, and this is where Yuki Tsunoda comes into his own, because there is the Red Bull car of Yuki Tsunoda making his way past a Lando Norris McLaren car. Norris is in and will come out behind Kimi Antonelli in all of this. Lando Norris pits, but is down in 9th place and is not in any kind of clean air as Lando Norris. Piastri on the radio. And Oscar Piastri thinks plan A is doable for now. Wants to stay out. Looking at Esteban Ocon. Ocon is 20 seconds behind the lead of this Grand Prix. So if Max Verstappen can absolutely slam in a couple of laps, Max Verstappen could actually pit and still come out ahead of Esteban Ocon. Lando Norris had to react, but I mean, Russell was absolutely flying. You look at where Russell is compared to Charles Leclerc right now. But Lando Norris is in an awkward position at this point. He's got to deal with lots of traffic ahead of him all of a sudden. Apologies. Lando Norris losing time, though, to his championship rivals. Verstappen and Piastri disappear into the distance. Let's see what the lap times are like as Lando Norris pushing away. Charles Leclerc looks all over the place on those fresh hard compound tyres. Leclerc and Norris, they pitted to cover off George Russell. Makes sense at the time, but... Oh, apologies. Just going to have to reload the live stream. And George Russell not very happy about Charles Leclerc moving under braking. Lando Norris making a move on Kimi Antonelli and gets past Kimi Antonelli as well. But Antonelli now has the DRS2. Will Antonelli have a little run back at Lando Norris down in towards turn 9? He has a little think about it, does the Italian, but concedes. And Kimi Antonelli is going to have a go once again, but Lando Norris is more involved in the Williams car ahead of him. Lando Norris going for a move once more. Carlos Sainz ahead of him, and Lando Norris does indeed move ahead of Carlos Sainz and up into 7th place, and that's going to be vital for Lando Norris in this, moving up a couple of places and getting Antonelli and Carlos Sainz out of the way while Charles Leclerc is still behind the other Mercedes car. George Russell trying his best to get past the Ferrari of Leclerc. This championship is not over yet. Looking at where Esteban Ocon is, he's 22 seconds adrift of Verstappen. So Verstappen can pit and still come out ahead of Esteban Ocon in all of this. The problem is Lando Norris, as much as he's been able to deal with Sainz and Antonelli, as Sainz now pits from that position, releasing Charles Leclerc to behind Kimi Antonelli in all of this. He's then got to look at the back of Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda, and it's a Liam Lawson who's already got a 5-second penalty as well. Goodness me, this is not over yet for Lando Norris in any sense. Oscar Piastri is also closing in on Max Verstappen. And actually, Lando Norris sees Liam Lawson and does Liam Lawson. He's round Lance Stroll. And Liam Lawson now is Lando Norris. And these are the kind of overtakes that Lando Norris has been kind of missing, in my opinion, from this season so far, but is now really going for. As Liam Lawson has a little look back at Lando Norris, and they go around turn 9 side by side, and Liam Lawson is not going to let that lie. Lawson now trying to get back at Lando Norris. Will he make a silly lunge through the final sector? He doesn't. Liam Lawson fighting with Lando Norris, but Lando Norris has the better of him for now. Yuki Tsunoda, the next car up for Lando Norris. Lando Norris has been flying through. I mean, he is still losing time. If you look at the lap times from Lando Norris compared to the 2 championship rivals he's got in front of him, but crucially for Lando Norris, he is a lot further ahead of Leclerc and Russell than he was before. This is where Yuki Tsunoda now comes into play. Lando Norris has cleared the likes of Antonelli and Sainz, and now Stroll and Lawson as well. But now we see a little battle between the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll and Charles Leclerc going side by side. Charles Leclerc down the back straight, right next to Lance Stroll, and actually trying to get past Liam Lawson as well. And Charles Leclerc is not letting Lando Norris lie. He is back up behind the McLaren car. 1.6 seconds now, the gap between Norris and Leclerc. And I'm sure as soon as Lando Norris catches up to the back of Yuki Tsunoda, that gap to Charles Leclerc will be disappearing a little bit sooner than Lando Norris would have hoped for. Tsunoda now on the hard compound tyre. Lando Norris catching up to the back of the Red Bull car fairly swiftly. Max Verstappen, though, is 25 seconds ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, 28 seconds ahead of Lando Norris. So looking very good indeed for Max Verstappen to win this Grand Prix, but still needs one driver to do him a favour. Verstappen and Piastri in first and second place. Yuki Tsunoda yet to have stopped. Lando Norris catching the back of the Red Bull. Will Yuki Tsunoda go long, though? Is everybody else maybe going for a 2-stop strategy where Yuki Tsunoda's only going for a 1-stop? Can Tsunoda hold up Lando Norris long enough? Here we are then. We've got a lot of drivers who have stopped. Lawson and Stroll yet to have stopped. Antonelli yet to have stopped as well, kind of in this midfield pack. Lando Norris leading the cars that have pitted. And Yuki being told about Lando Norris catching. All you can give it, Yuki, when Lando Norris catches. If you could do us a little bit favour in terms of the Drivers' Championship, that would be wonderful. And People will be getting flashbacks to 2021. Remember Sergio Perez defending for his life against a Lewis Hamilton-driven Mercedes car as Max Verstappen was looking for his first world championship. Yuki Tsunoda is now fighting for his 5th world championship. Sorry, Max Verstappen is now fighting for his 5th world championship, and Yuki Tsunoda could be the driver to do him a favor. I know what to do, so leave it to me, says Yuki Tsunoda on the radio. Surely they'll try and slow him down a touch through the final sector. See what they can do. There's only so much they can do. Yuki Tsunoda can fight for position because it is still technically, you know, there's going to be no blue flags waving for Yuki Tsunoda at this point in the Grand Prix. Yuki will buy every single second he can for Max Verstappen at this point. Liam Lawson comes into the pits then. And he's going to drop all the way to the back of the pack, I think, Liam Lawson. As Franco Colapinto makes his way around. So a late stop for Lawson. And a one-stop strategy, surely, for the Racing Bull. It's going to be tough for these guys on the one-stop strategy. It's all right for Verstappen and Piastri. They've got themselves a pit stop margin at the front of the pack, but everyone else is going to be in a really awkward spot. Lance Stroll has lost position to George Russell once again. Russell, though, 4 seconds adrift of Leclerc. So it is Verstappen, Piastri, Tsunoda, our top 3 at the moment. Tsunoda yet to stop, though, as well, and is 24 seconds adrift of Oscar Piastri, so not really in that mix. Lando Norris being slowed down by Yuki Tsunoda in this final sector. Tsunoda charging up his battery as much as possible. Tsunoda being told on the radio that Leclerc is only 1.4 seconds behind Lando. So let's see what Tsunoda can do here then. Lando has caught the back of the Red Bull car and is going to be fighting for position. Tsunoda going down towards turn 5, and is this where Red Bull could have done with holding on to Sergio Perez for another season? Sergio Perez did an insane job in 2021 defending in a very similar scenario. Yuki Tsunoda defending down the back straight. It's going to pull over to the side. Lando Norris, though, is going to be side by side with the Red Bull car, and Yuki Tsunoda's got absolutely nothing to give. Sailed by has Lando Norris, and that is crucial for the championship. Lando Norris up into 3rd place once again, and now hunting down the 2 drivers leading this race. Yuki Tsunoda could do absolutely nothing. Lando Norris was alongside and beyond him before they even got to the braking zone. And Verstappen gets the box call and is in. Verstappen does decide to pit. Piastri on the hard compound tyre continues on. So it is a medium tyre swap onto a hard compound tyre for Max Verstappen. And the Red Bull car gets away. A 2.3 second stop for Max Verstappen. And he really didn't do that good of a job, Yuki Tsunoda, for Max Verstappen there. Lando Norris has disappeared. And Verstappen now coming out of the pits is going to have a good lead over Lando Norris still. And Oscar Piastri being told, let's go for it. This was now or never. Charles Leclerc now catching the back of Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda just didn't do the job, did he? That he was hoping, or that Red Bull were hoping he would do, but I don't think he had the pace to be able to. Lando Norris moved to the left-hand side. Tsunoda moved across, but... And Tsunoda even weaving ahead of Lando Norris. Yeah, just had no chance of holding up Lando, did Yuki Tsunoda there. And Tsunoda, yeah, just had to give the position that's going to be investigated, and Tsunoda's going to get a penalty for that. And he still didn't hold up Lando Norris for very long at all. Charles Leclerc is beyond Yuki Tsunoda, and 2.3 seconds adrift of the top 3. Max Verstappen has pitted and come out still 2nd place, has a 5-second margin to Lando Norris behind, but Norris will be looking at the delta and going, P3 is enough. And this is the thing. Lando Norris knows that a podium place is more than good enough for him to win this World Championship. Oscar Piastri will also be pushing his hard compound tyres now like crazy. Piastri, 18 seconds ahead of Verstappen. 23 seconds ahead of Lando Norris, but his pace not quite as good as Lando Norris's. Piastri was a 129.4, Lando Norris a 128.8. And here we are then. Verstappen comes around turn 5. We can see the back straight. Lando Norris joining it in the haze behind Max Verstappen. But in terms of the championship, is ahead of the Red Bull man. Charles Leclerc there, 2.5 seconds the gap. Yuki Tsunoda, another 2.5 seconds. And then George Russell in 6th spot. Yuki Tsunoda is surely going to have to pit sometime soon. He's done 24 laps on those hard compound tyres. Didn't really do any favours for Max Verstappen, it has to be said. And then actually got overtaken by Charles Leclerc. And the stewards are investigating that Yuki Tsunoda defense from Lando Norris, which wasn't even a very good defense, to be honest. It might lead to a 5-second penalty for Yuki Tsunoda. And also forcing another driver off the track has been noted for Yuki Tsunoda as well. Not the best of driving from Tsunoda. Charles Leclerc has just put in the fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far, 128.1. And from ice skating on those hard compound tyres, now seems to be finding some pace on them. The Ferrari clicking into gear, who's a couple of tenths quicker than Lando Norris last lap. And the quickest man out on the circuit at the moment, Yuki Tsunoda, leaving the track and gaining an advantage, is now also under investigation at turn 5. It was a disaster class from Yuki Tsunoda in terms of defending from Lando Norris, and is now picking up investigation after investigation for himself. Lando Norris, 2.2 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc. That's now 2 seconds, and I'll tell you what, Charles Leclerc is closing this gap. The Ferrari car now absolutely going for it. Piastri then leading this race by 17.5 seconds from Verstappen, yet to have stopped. Yuki Tsunoda also hasn't pitted. Same with Kimi Antonelli. Everyone else has done the at least one pit stop that you are mandated to do during a Grand Prix. Liam Lawson has served that 5-second penalty. That's why he's dropped all the way to the back of the pack. He is 20th. Colapinto and Gasly, 19th and 18th. Carlos Sainz running around in 17th place. Isaac Hadjar has dropped all the way down to 16th after starting inside of the point-scoring places. That's disappointing in his final race for Racing Bulls. Ollie Behrman is 15th. Alex Albon, 14th. Ocon, 13th. And I'll tell you what, pitting early really did play into the favour of the likes of Nico Hülkenberg. He's up to 12. Bortoletto has dropped down to 11th. Fernando Alonso's up to 10th. Antonelli's 9th. Hamilton 8th. Lance Stroll 7th. And George Russell is in 6th place, closing in on the back of a Red Bull car. Unfortunately for him, it's only the Red Bull of Yuki Tsunoda. And he is quite far adrift of Charles Leclerc ahead of him. George Russell struggling with a braking issue at the beginning of this Grand Prix as we head towards the middle part of this race. And we are soon to have more laps completed than there is left to go. And Lando Norris is holding on to the lead of this championship. Charles Leclerc is being told that this pace is mega. And it is. He's now within 2 seconds of the McLaren car ahead. We don't know how hard Lando Norris is pushing, but Charles Leclerc is still the quickest man out on track and was 0.4 of a second quicker than Lando Norris last lap. So Charles Leclerc absolutely rattling that Ferrari car around. Lando Norris running 3rd out on track, but that is good enough for now. Max Verstappen in 2nd spot. Oscar Piastri running at the front of the race on the hard compound tyre. It's done 27 laps on those hard compound tyres. And let's see what Piastri wants to do, because everyone wanted to get off the medium tyre. The medium not doing the lap times that the hard is capable of, hence why the likes of Lewis Hamilton are now up into the point scoring places after pitting very early for those hard compound tyres. But the guys that started on the hard have to swap onto the medium at some point. Oscar Piastri's gap to Max Verstappen, 15 seconds. The gap to Lando Norris is also now only 20.3, as Lando Norris has just put in a fast lap of his own at 27.998. The first person into the 127s is Lando Norris. So he's looking for a championship win. Starting to get a little bit nervous. This is the thing as well. Are we looking at two-stop strategies for those guys that pitted very, very early? You look at Lewis Hamilton, 19 laps completed on those hards already. Is he going to have to stop one more time, or is he going to try and go to the end of the Grand Prix on those? And even for someone like Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc, 12 laps now completed on those hard compound tyres. How much of a cliff will they fall off towards the end of this Grand Prix? For now, though, Lando Norris leads Charles Leclerc by 2 seconds, is third in the race, and that's all he needs to do. In terms of the Drivers' Championship, give you a quick look at it. Lando Norris would be leading the championship, 423 points. Piastri, if he does win this race, would jump up to second in the Drivers' Championship, but still has to pit Oscar Piastri, so Max Verstappen effectively still second in the championship. 25 points likely to go into the pocket of the current world champion. Will he be the current world champion in 29 laps' time? Here comes George Russell on Yuki Tsunoda. George Russell trying to get himself back up into the top 5 and does indeed get himself into that top 5. Yuki Tsunoda picking up a penalty. At the same time, he is overtaken by George Russell. And made sense. He did move more than once under braking. Did Yuki Tsunoda. And it was a disaster class of a defense from Yuki Tsunoda, it has to be said, down towards turn 6. Did not hold up Lando Norris even slightly, and also just ended up pushing himself into the steward's room, and a 5-second penalty for Yuki Tsunoda. I mean, it makes sense. Lando Norris also not given any kind of problem for leaving the track and gaining an advantage, because he was pushed off of the track and didn't really gain much of an advantage other than not running into the back of a Red Bull car. Max Verstappen closing in on Piastri again. Piastri also has now been undercut by Lando Norris pretty substantially. If Piastri does pit, he's going to come out 3 seconds adrift of Lando Norris. Of course, we'll have the fresher tyres at the end of the Grand Prix, but we'll have to move back past his teammate if Lando Norris is not going to pit again. Charles Leclerc now back to over 2 seconds behind Norris, and Norris looking comfortable at this point. Gabriel Bortoleto goes for a little move on Kimi Antonelli to get back into the point-scoring positions, and Bortoleto down towards turn 9 gets himself ahead of Kimi Antonelli and now sits behind Fernando Alonso, who pitted at a similar time to Gabriel Bortoleto. So Alonso on the same kind of strategy as his protege behind. The manager and the rookie in 9th and 10th place. They've been side by side a few times this season, haven't they? Alonso and Bortoleto. It's been quite nice to see. Side by side again. Yuki Tsunoda continues on in 6th place. Lance Stroll in 7th. The two drivers yet to have pitted inside of the top 10 other than Oscar Piastri, our race leader. And Kimi Antonelli has also not stopped yet. He's on the hard compound tyre at Mercedes. And I think those drivers that decided to start on the hard compound tyre now sort of having the problem of starting on the hard compound tyre and the fact that you've got to go longer. You do lose that little bit of race pace at this point in the Grand Prix. The hope is that you gain it back towards the end of the race, but Kimi Antonelli is already losing quite a lot of lap time and is not putting himself in a very nice place to try and overtake towards the end of the Grand Prix and get himself back up into the point-scoring places. As Esteban Ocon has a little look at Nico Hulkenberg down in towards turn 9, and Ocon actually able to get past Nico Hulkenberg. And Yuki Tsunoda is not very happy about the penalty he's been given, but he has been given it nonetheless. And Max Verstappen has just set the fastest lap of the race, now 12 seconds behind the race leader, Oscar Piastri. Piastri, even in the clean air, just does not have the pace of Verstappen and Norris. Verstappen is in an absolutely commanding position, it has to be said, as Lewis Hamilton does come in for a second time. So there is a little bit of confirmation that maybe these hard compound tyres will not go as long as you think. Lewis Hamilton deciding to pit 23 laps completed on those hard compound tyres. And it's a set of fresh mediums going onto the Ferrari. So therefore, some of those drivers that did pit very early on indeed might have to pit once more. So you're looking at Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, George Russell. They might have to pit again. Where Yuki Tsunoda, Oscar Piastri may be going for the one-stop strategy. I mean, George Russell is 12 seconds adrift of Charles Leclerc in 5th place. It's looking like an absolute no-go for Oscar Piastri in terms of the championship. Remember, needs Lando Norris to finish all the way down in 6th and win this Grand Prix. But if you're Max Verstappen, you are hoping and praying that Charles Leclerc pits perfectly. Let's see where Charles Leclerc, if he pitted now, Charles Leclerc would come out around about Lance Stroll. Yuki Tsunoda does need to pit. I'll tell you what, if Charles Leclerc pits soon, could be a good opportunity to do so in the Ferrari, as Yuki Tsunoda does come in, because he would still come out behind George Russell, but by a little bit of a gap. He'd come out just ahead of Lance Stroll. Would have some lovely clean air to run into with Charles Leclerc. But then we'd just have the slight problem of, obviously, oh my goodness, we'd have the slight problem of Lando Norris actually having fresher tyres at the end of the Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli also comes in for the first time in this race. So Tsunoda and Antonelli finally deciding they've had enough. Lance Stroll actually hasn't yet pitted. So Charles Leclerc's got a nice little window to go into when he does pit, if he does pit. And where would Oscar Piastri come out? At the moment, he'd come out ahead of George Russell, would Oscar Piastri, but behind Norris and Leclerc. But the one-stop strategy playing into Oscar Piastri's hands, possibly. Max Verstappen still the quickest man out on track. It's going to be an interesting final 25 laps. There's still some strategy decisions that need to be decided upon, and fairly swiftly. At the moment, Lando Norris is still our world champion. He is still running around in 3rd place, where he's been pretty much since the start of this race, Lando Norris. And 3rd place is good enough. He's known that since the beginning. He saw Oscar Piastri overtake him early on in the race, but knew that that didn't matter overall. Lando Norris, a podium will do. 2 seconds, now 4 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. And I just feel like that Ferrari car, he's going to come into contention. Charles Leclerc needs to pit very, very soon. In fact, Lando Norris is closing in on the back of Verstappen. And this is the question. How quick will Piastri be on that medium tyre? Gianpiero Lambiase saying, look, Max, we can't give up too much race time to Piastri here. But we understand that you also probably want to try and back up Lando Norris as much as you possibly can sooner rather than later. It's going to come right down to the wire here. It's going to depend when these guys decide on that final pit stop, and Oscar Piastri decides on his only pit stop as Piastri's going around again. Piastri is going to be on some very fresh tyres, but he's going to be behind Leclerc and Norris if he does pit now. Piastri is going to still be ahead of George Russell. When does Piastri pull the trigger? I think it's tricky because now he's also behind Charles Leclerc. Does he have to wait until Leclerc kind of looks like they're going to make a move at Ferrari? It's tough. It's tough if you're an Oscar Piastri fan. Lando being told he's doing a great job. And Charles Leclerc might go on to a 2, he's being told, Lando Norris on the radio. So that tells us that Lando Norris is not going for a 2-stop strategy, quite possibly, because they're saying at McLaren, Charles Leclerc likely to go on to a 2-stop. Is Lando Norris thinking about a 2-stop or not? He is gaining on Max Verstappen, 5.9 seconds the gap between Verstappen and Norris. Oscar Piastri falling away in terms of lap time, but continuing to go on further. Piastri has done every single lap of this Grand Prix as we go on to lap 36, of the Grand Prix. 35 laps completed on those tyres for Piastri. He's going to do at least another one, as he's yet to pit in this one. Verstappen second, Lando Norris third, Charles Leclerc fourth, George Russell fifth. Lance Stroll also hasn't stopped yet for Aston Martin. He's running in 6th place. Fernando Alonso then in 7th place in the midfield. Bortoleto 8th. Ocon and Behrman have both got themselves in the point-scoring places as Nico Hülkenberg is starting to struggle on those hard compound tyres. And Hülkenberg was one of those very early pitters, same as Lewis Hamilton, but Hamilton decided to pit a second time. Hülkenberg also might have to pit a second time as well. When does that come for the Stakes Sauber car, as he's now lost position to all the cars he did gain position on by pitting so early? Lewis Hamilton, little replay what's going on down at Ferrari. Making a move on the Alpine cars. Hamilton getting past Colapinto down towards turn 6 last lap, and now looking at the back of the other Alpine of Pierre Gasly. Down in 15th place is Lewis Hamilton, but he's putting in some fairly decent lap times on the medium tyre. 128.5 last time around. You look at the lap times of the cars ahead in the 130s. So Hamilton is going to be closing in on the back of the points. Yuki Tsunoda has dealt with his penalty, by the way, should say. The rear is starting to get a bit worse now, says Oscar Piastri. He's 12 seconds behind Lando Norris. Ahead of Lando Norris. Charles Leclerc, 4th as well, is now 17 seconds adrift of Piastri. It's not looking good for an Oscar Piastri title, but it's looking very comfortable for Lando Norris at the moment. Going to take this opportunity as we head into the final few laps of this Grand Prix. 22 left to run out. If we could hit that subscribe button, that'd be absolutely amazing. If you hit the like button on the stream, that would be awesome. Trying to hit 150,000 subscribers before the end of the season. We've gotten so close. We're on 149,200. I know that 800 subscribers is a lot of subscribers, but if you could hit that subscribe button, that'd be absolutely incredible. We're also nearly at 800 followers now over on Twitch. So if you are watching on Twitch, if you could give us a follow, that would be absolutely incredible as well. Here we are then. 22 laps left, and Oscar Piastri makes his way back past the pit entrance once more and does not come in. Round turn 16 he goes, and on to lap 38, still on those hard compound tyres, still holding on to a dream of Lando Norris falling away and making a mistake. We saw Lewis Hamilton actually crash his Ferrari car at turn 9 in free practice. Maybe looking for Lando Norris to do a similar thing if you are an Oscar Piastri fan. It's looking like the only way that Oscar Piastri is going to still be in championship contention, as Max Verstappen now goes for a 1:27.7. And another fast lap for the Dutchman means he's 4.5 seconds off the lead of this Grand Prix. 14 laps completed on those hard compound tyres. And Max Verstappen's in an odd window, really. He doesn't need to pit again. Could pit again, depending on the situation behind him. He's got a 6-second gap to Lando Norris. Lando Norris has another 6-second gap to Charles Leclerc behind. Verstappen were to pit, he would still only come out sort of around, well, actually, he'd come out well ahead of George Russell. So Verstappen might decide to pit again. Piastri, though, still ahead. Albon is speeding in the pit lane, so he's going to get a slam dunk penalty for that. That's always a penalty whenever you speed in the pit lane. Piastri continues on again. It's come around turn 16 one more time. And it is indeed a 5-second penalty for Alex Albon. The stewards are dishing out the penalties today. Lawson's had a 5-second. Tsunoda a 5-second. Now Albon a 5-second as well. Although Lawson and Tsunoda have been able to deal with those. Gabriel Bortoleto is making moves through the midfield, and Bortoleto fighting with Esteban Ocon, and Ocon trying to get around the outside of Bortoleto, and does. Bortoleto has dropped down to 9th place. Esteban Ocon looking very swift on a slightly fresher set of hard compound tyres compared to the drivers around him. And Ocon back up into 8th place in his Haas car. It's been a real battle in the midfield, it has to be said. Alonso, Ocon, Bortoleto, Behrman, Hulkenberg, Sainz, Hamilton at one point was in that mix as well. They've all kind of been fighting for position. We've been keeping an eye on the front of the pack, really, looking at whether or not Verstappen or Piastri can pull off a dream final race. Lewis Hamilton underneath the rear wing of Isaac Hadjar. And Hadjar absolutely besotted with Lewis Hamilton, one of his biggest fans in racing. And doesn't give up too much of a battle as the Ferrari makes its way past Isaac Hadjar, not really racing one another, as Hadjar on 24-lap old hard compound tyres compared to the fresh tyres on Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari car. And Oscar continues on again. Max Verstappen now 1.6 seconds off the back, and I think Piastri just waiting until Verstappen is sort of within touching distance as Charles Leclerc pits. Leclerc does pit. Leclerc needs that second pit stop. Had to be a second pit stop, really. 23 laps completed on those hard compound tyres. We saw it from Lewis Hamilton, so that kind of gave away that Charles Leclerc was going to have to pit again because Lewis Hamilton wasn't able to hold on to those hard compound tyres any longer. Charles Leclerc then does come in, is going to slot in behind George Russell in this on a set of medium tyres as Charles Leclerc. And let's see what Charles Leclerc can do from that position then. Leclerc, 2.7 seconds adrift, and Lando Norris is going to cover off. Box, box for Lando Norris. Piastri still yet to have stopped, though. Lando Norris is being told to box. Is Piastri going to box instead? Max Verstappen now right under the rear wing of Oscar Piastri. Is Piastri maybe playing the team game here? Has Piastri been told to hold up Max Verstappen a touch? Because Verstappen is now within DRS range of Oscar Piastri. And is Piastri doing his teammate a favour here? Because Piastri is all but out of championship contention as Lando Norris does pit for McLaren. Needs to be swift. In he comes. And out he goes. It was a good stop from McLaren. 2.4 second stop for Lando Norris. No problems for them. Making his way down towards the end of the pit lane. Has to go through the tunnel underneath the racetrack. George Russell and Charles Leclerc only now coming around the final corner. Max Verstappen is making a move on Oscar Piastri down towards turn 6 and does make the pass. So Max Verstappen, now your race leader once again. Piastri now has to do the impossible, really, from second place. He needs to pit. He needs to get back past Verstappen. He needs Lando Norris to drop behind where Lance Stroll is currently racing. And Lance Stroll is 12 seconds behind Charles Leclerc in all of this. Oscar Piastri led the championship from Saudi Arabia all the way to Mexico. But the second half of the season just has not clicked for the Australian. And with 18 laps left to go, I think we're basically pulling the plug on Piastri's championship hopes. And Piastri does box box. So Piastri was indeed just holding up Max Verstappen for a lap or so. And Piastri then comes in to stop for McLaren. 41 laps completed on those hard compound tyres. It's a swap onto the medium, 2.2 second stop for Piastri. And the McLaren team are done with their pit stops for the year. Piastri now underneath the racetrack. This is the thing now. Piastri is going to come out ahead of his teammate, of course, because Lando Norris has pitted before. But Lando Norris is going to be a distance behind, so Piastri's not going to really hold up the pack. Verstappen is leading by a considerable margin now. Does Verstappen pit now? Does Verstappen pit later? When's the option for Verstappen to really come in for this second pit stop? Verstappen got sort of 5 or 6 laps to play with here, it has to be said. As he's making his way past the Alpine of Colapinto and now Pierre Gasly. Charles Leclerc making a move on George Russell, and this is for position. Charles Leclerc trying to make his way back up into 4th spot, and does on the fresher medium tyres. George Russell dropping down into 5th once again, and Leclerc back behind Lando Norris in terms of the pecking order, but 5.7 seconds adrift of the McLaren. And Piastri being told on the radio, don't give up too much time. We want to try and chase down Verstappen here if possible. But Piastri knows he also needs to back Lando Norris into the pack. So Piastri is going to continue on. Needs a miracle, really. And Verstappen also needs Charles Leclerc to get a little bit of a wiggle on. Verstappen can now pit completely and utterly for free. That is the pace that Max Verstappen has been able to show today. He has been absolutely flying inside of that Red Bull car. Has the pace advantage over everybody, but is not yet leading the championship. Would be 2 points adrift of Lando Norris if it were to end as it is right now, as Charles Leclerc has just gone faster than Lando Norris. There's 16 laps left to go here. And I'll tell you what, Charles Leclerc with a 1:27.2, that is a hell of a lap time from Charles Leclerc. He's on the medium tyre compared to Lando Norris on the hard. Has the Ferrari team been holding a little bit of momentum up their sleeve on the medium tyre? Because Lewis Hamilton is also flying. He's back up into the point-scoring places as Hamilton now gets past Carlos Sainz and is underneath the rear wing of Gabriel Bortoleto. Our Ferrari suddenly going to cause some noise as Charles Leclerc gains on Lando Norris. Leclerc, please. He's doing his best. He's going to need to be 1.5 seconds quicker than you every lap, is what Max Verstappen has been told over the radio. Verstappen, it's looking okay. It's looking okay. But Verstappen's going to have to do some interesting things towards the end of this race if he wants to win the championship. He's got a free pit stop to Oscar Piastri. Piastri is 0.5 of a second quicker, though. So Verstappen's going to have to pit at some point soon. Does have to be said. Charles Leclerc is faster than Lando Norris at the moment in the Ferrari, but is he going to burn through those medium tyres? It's still not won yet for Lando Norris or Max Verstappen. Does feel like Piastri is out of contention, just looking at how the drivers are situated at the moment. Russell and Alonso too far adrift and likely to have to pit again, as George Russell has done 29 laps on those hard compound tyres, so is nowhere near the pace. Piastri on the radio. How do I win this race? Verstappen is on to pit stop. 27.9s. Piastri is the fastest man out on track. 22.5 seconds from Oscar Piastri. Verstappen's got to come in now, surely, because he's losing too much time to Piastri here. Doesn't want to come out of the pits behind Oscar Piastri. Needs to stick in front of the Australian, but Lando Norris is also there in third spot. Charles Leclerc hasn't quite been able to gain as rapidly in the last couple of laps. I think Lando Norris being given the hurry up by the McLaren team. I think Max Verstappen's got a pit now if I'm Red Bull. But there's a reason that Hannah Schmidt gets paid a lot more than I do. She's going to be all over the telemetries of every single driver that Max Verstappen is currently fighting with. Lewis Hamilton is past Bortoletto and now on the back of Behrman. Hamilton's found a little bit of pace inside of that Ferrari car just to finish up this season. Has done 13 laps on those mediums, though. Needs to be careful they don't absolutely drop off a cliff towards the end of this Grand Prix. Still 13 laps left to go. Oscar Piastri is fastest of anybody. Max Verstappen didn't pit, by the way. 22.2 seconds now the gap, and still falling. So I think Verstappen has... I mean, he's got to come out ahead of Piastri when he pits. Ollie Behrman and Lewis Hamilton having a little bit of a tete-a-tete down at towards turn 9. That's the other thing that could play into this. Could there be a safety car at some point? 2021 flashbacks again for Lewis Hamilton fans. If there's a safety car towards the end of this race, as Charles Leclerc sets the fastest lap of it so far, and he is 0.2 of a second quicker than Lando Norris once again. Verstappen continuing on round turn 9, and I'm just keeping an eye on this. 12 laps left to go after they come past the start-finish line here, Verstappen. I think they got a pit. They've got a pit now because they're now, you know, a slow pit stop means they will come out behind Oscar Piastri now as Pierre Gasly picks up a 5-second penalty, I think, for track limits violations. That is his 4th track limits violation, Pierre Gasly. And Verstappen continues on for another lap. Verstappen continues on for another lap. The gap between Verstappen and Piastri now 21.468. Pit stop is about 21 seconds here in Abu Dhabi. I'm not sure about this. Charles Leclerc now 4 seconds adrift of Lando Norris. Oscar Piastri 4.5 seconds ahead of Lando Norris. Max Verstappen, the gap now 21 seconds exactly to Oscar Piastri. And he's still got half a lap to go, if not more, as Max Verstappen, as he's now making his way through turn 6 and turn 7. Oh, it's going to be an odds. Is Verstappen going to pit again? Does Verstappen just go to the end of the Grand Prix? He could go to the end of the Grand Prix and win it. Could Max Verstappen, but then he's going to have no opportunity to hold up any of the McLaren cars or cause any chaos behind. Verstappen now coming around the final sector again. Through turn 13 and 14 he comes. And Verstappen on the radio comes around the final corner again. And if Max Verstappen now pits, he will come out behind Oscar Piastri. So Max Verstappen has lost that pit advantage that he did have to the car. He could have pitted for a free pit stop at one point there, Max Verstappen. I think he's realizing that Charles Leclerc is his only opportunity of really doing anything dramatic here. Yuki Tsunoda didn't do the job that Max Verstappen would have been hoping for at the beginning of this Grand Prix. And Lando Norris will still lead this championship by 2 points. Here is the championship standings. Max Verstappen would finish 2 points adrift of Lando Norris as it stands. Oscar Piastri would finish 3rd, 13 points behind the championship lead. Even if he does come 2nd in this Grand Prix, Max Verstappen still continues on, comes down towards turn 9. Lando Norris is still 5 seconds behind Piastri, another 5 seconds to Charles Leclerc, and at the moment, There's not really anything too dramatic happening, which is exactly what you want if you're a Lando Norris fan. And I'll take it. Not gonna argue with Red Bull here. I think they've kind of left the door a little bit open for Lando Norris. Kimi Antonelli making a move on Isaac Hadjar. What's the plan here then at Red Bull? Does Max Verstappen pit and try and cause some sort of chaos now that he's behind Oscar Piastri? Not this time around. Lando's done everything he's needed to. Still running around in third place. Piastri, fastest first sector of anybody, as he comes around turn 5. And now Lando Norris catching up to the back of his teammate. 4.6 seconds the gap. Can see Oscar Piastri in the distance. Max Verstappen knows that he can just win this race from here. Doesn't need to pit. Can continue on to the end of the Grand Prix on the hard compound tyre, but will not win the championship. Max Verstappen, if he stays where he is right now. I don't know. I just feel like Red Bull could have pitted earlier, but then you run the risk of doing something silly. Can't really back up the pack that much, can he, Max Verstappen? You know, you remember back to Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. Hamilton did the same thing, was trying to back Nico Rosberg into everybody else and get himself a position to win the championship when they were fighting for it in 2016. Verstappen hasn't really done that, and Verstappen continues on for another lap again as we see Lando Norris come around turn 1 for the 50th time in this Grand Prix. Piastri has driven in incredibly good race as well, you have to say, in second place. Just has not had the pace of Max Verstappen, and Verstappen has been in a league of his own, really, compared to everybody else. But that's Piastri second, Lando Norris third. And I'm starting to just get nervous. I feel like even though there's only 9 laps left to go and everything at the moment is looking fine, it just takes one mistake. It just takes one problem. It's not over yet. We saw Lando Norris have an engine failure right at the end of the Netherlands Grand Prix, remember. Just because he is running in third place now does not mean he is guaranteed to finish in third place. And that's on my mind. Why does Max have to pit again? He doesn't have to pit again. It just seems it's an odd choice to not pit and, you know, not try and cause some kind of friction for Lando Norris, because at the moment, Lando Norris can just finish the Grand Prix where he is, comfortably 4 seconds behind his teammate, but also 4 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc. Nothing really happening ahead of him or behind him. And can happily take his first world championship for the McLaren team. And Lando Norris has been through it all this year, really has. Second best to his teammate through the first half of the year. Then, as he was starting to build it back, Max Verstappen also came to the fore. If there are 5 racing laps, including this one, we think, what are your thoughts on softs? And they're talking about a safety car situation at McLaren. They're getting ready and prepared just in case there's one towards the end of this Grand Prix. As Max Verstappen continues around the final corner again. Verstappen's not going to pit. Nico Hülkenberg making a move on Alex Albon, and Alex Albon drops down to 17th place in this one. Alonso still running best of the rest in 6th place. Esteban Ocon up into 7th. Hamilton's done a great job, actually, up into 8th place for Lewis. Then Ollie Bearman and Gabriel Bortoleto, the 2 rookies, rounding out the point-scoring places at the moment. Carlos Sainz, the closest competitor. Yuki Tsunoda down in 12th place on the medium compound tyre, trying to get back into the points where he started. Antonelli, Hadjar, Hulkenberg, Albon, Lawson, Gasly, Colapinto, as Hulkenberg actually makes a move up ahead of Isaac Hadjar, and Hadjar is really not having the best of final races in a racing bull, is he? And a second warning for Max Verstappen on track limits has just come through. Antonelli, Hulkenberg, Lawson, Colapinto, Hamilton. Also 1 track limits infringement away from a penalty. Verstappen, 2 track limits infringements. Bortoleto, 2 as well. And we are right at the end of this 2025 campaign. It is looking like a Lando Norris World Championship is right in the mix. Verstappen will finish the season in 2nd spot. Oscar Piastri will finish 3rd as the championship stands with 5 laps to go. 6 laps to go. I'm running out of it. I'm nervous. I'm losing my mind. And Lando Norris is actually catching the back of Oscar Piastri here. Piastri into the 127s. Lando Norris 126. Charles Leclerc 127s. So Lando Norris now the fastest man out on track. And is this Lando Norris just having a little bit of fun? Not coasting by any means. He is still rattling around inside of that McLaren car and pushing it all the way to the end of this Grand Prix. But he's just got to bring it home in 3rd. Doesn't need to overtake Oscar Piastri. Doesn't need to risk any maneuver with the McLaren car ahead of him. Charles Leclerc has fallen away. The pace on that medium tyre came to an end. Charles Leclerc, the quickest lap of anybody so far in this Grand Prix, but wasn't able to maintain that speed throughout this final stint. Max Verstappen is going to win this race comfortably. He's got a 15.5-second gap to Oscar Piastri ahead. Has been the quickest driver in Abu Dhabi this weekend. Started on pole position, has led every single lap effectively of this Grand Prix, other than when Oscar Piastri hadn't pitted. But the championship is within touching distance of a British driver once again. The Dutchman took it away from Lewis Hamilton in 2021. Will it go back to Britain in 2025? Carlos Sainz actually trying to get himself into the point-scoring places. Gabriel Bortoleto defending it for his life into turn 9, and Carlos Sainz has to give it up this time around. Bortoleto will lead Sainz into lap 54 of this Grand Prix. Verstappen now making his way past Liam Lawson. Lawson down in 18th place. Isaac Hadjar has fallen as well, the 19th place, but the back markers aren't going to play too much of a role in this, as Lando Norris is still too far away from them. Lando Norris coming around turn 9 and again gaining on his teammate. Oscar Piastri now 2.7 seconds ahead of Lando Norris, and Norris escaping away from Leclerc. Leclerc now 7.5 seconds, nearly 8 seconds adrift. And Lando Norris just making sure of this 3rd place finish by any means necessary. Lap 55 of this Grand Prix starts for Lando Norris. He comes across the line, and 4 laps. All he needs is 4 undramatic laps, and he is the world champion. Lando within touching distance. Gave up 2nd place to his teammate early on in this Grand Prix, but knew 3rd place was more than enough and has played the strategy perfectly from there. Let Piastri run his own race. Let Verstappen run his own race ahead of him. But made sure that he was covering off the position that counted. Made sure he defended from Leclerc. He defended from George Russell and is now looking comfortable in 3rd spot. As he comes around turn 6. Max Verstappen is now coming around turn 9 and actually catching the back of the other racing bull. And Lando Norris being told on the radio that Oscar is struggling with the rear tyres. He's on the medium tyre, Oscar Piastri, sort of the tyre that nobody really wanted. Everybody swapping off of the medium tyre onto the hards fairly early on in this Grand Prix. And the hard compound tyre does seem to have been the choice tyre this weekend. Not what I was expecting. The medium tyre has been the one that everybody has enjoyed most over the last few Grand Prix weekends, but the hard compound tyre coming to the fore this time around. And those drivers that were able to go onto the hard compound tyre and make it click have been the drivers that have shone. Lando Norris onto the hard compound tyre fairly early, then pitted for a second time. Charles Leclerc did the same. George Russell, actually, only on a one-stop strategy, has done 40 laps on those hard compound tyres in 5th place. Haven't seen much of the Briton at all, really. Fernando Alonso the same in 6th. Got a little bit of a gap to Esteban Ocon in 7th, although Lewis Hamilton is fighting for 8th place. Sorry, 7th place. Hamilton is in 8th place and trying to get past Esteban Ocon. Ollie Behrman is still in 9th place, and Lance Stroll has been able to get past Gabriel Bortoleto and Carlos Sainz, so Lance Stroll up into the final point scoring position as Carlos Sainz and Bortoleto were battling for that final point scoring place and seem to have fallen over one another. 3 laps left, 2.5 really, as Lando Norris makes his way to the final sector. Max Verstappen leads this race still by 13.4 seconds. Lando Norris, 2.9 seconds adrift of his teammate. Franco Colapinto now having a spot ahead of Oscar Piastri. Piastri, blue flags are going to be waved, and he's going to get past Franco Colapinto fairly soon. 2 laps left for Lando Norris as he crosses the start-finish line once again. Oh my goodness me. We are so close. And yet, so far, Lando Norris down towards turn 5. He's completed the first sector once again. Just got to do that one more time, Lando. One more first sector. A second and a third sector to come, though. Goodness me. It is very, very close to being done as Lando Norris makes his way around turn 7 for the penultimate time. The final race this season. Lando Norris has actually been able to just hold position. I think he was closing in on the back of Oscar Piastri a little bit quicker than the McLaren team were comfortable with. And Lando Norris probably just wanting to get this race over and done with. He is 20 corners away from a championship victory as Max Verstappen starts the final race of the Grand Prix. Verstappen now runs around turn 1. Lando Norris making his way around turn 16. And 16 corners now sit between Lando Norris and immortality. Lando Norris, turn 1 for the final time of this 2025 campaign. Max Verstappen is going to win this Grand Prix. He gets himself past Isaac Hadjar in the first sector of this final lap. He's going to gain 25 points, but it's not going to be quite enough. As it stands, Lando Norris will win this World Championship by 2 points to the Dutchman as he finishes the first sector for the final time. Lando Norris coming down the back straight. His teammate 3 seconds ahead of him, but doesn't need to get past him. He knows just a few laps, a few corners between him and the end of this race. Lando Norris comes around turn 7. Through turn 8 he comes to finish the middle sector of this Grand Prix circuit. Max Verstappen makes his way around the final few corners. Verstappen's lifted the trophy here in the past, a 4-time world champion, a valiant effort at the end of this Grand Prix season. It was 104 points the gap between Verstappen and the championship lead. It will cut to 2, but it will not be enough as Max Verstappen wins the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Oscar Piastri, the man who led the championship for the longest this season, from round 5 in Saudi Arabia to round 20 in Mexico, comes home in second place. But it's that man, Lando Norris, who took the lead of the championship in Mexico and claims the championship lead at the end of the season. Lando Norris is your world champion for the 2025 season. Charles Leclerc comes home in 4th place, just behind. George Russell is a distant 5th. Alonso, Ocon, Hamilton, Behrman and Stroll will finish inside of the point-scoring places. In fact, Lance Stroll trying to get past Ollie Behrman on the final lap of this Grand Prix. But it is Lando Norris who will lead the championship when it matters most. Lando Norris, top of the standings, 423 points, and immortality in Formula One, 421 for Max Verstappen. As I say, so close from the Dutchman, and an incredible effort from him to close that gap to just 2 points coming across the start-finish line at the end of this Grand Prix season. 410 points for Oscar Piastri, a 13-point gap to 3rd place. Russell finishes 4th, Leclerc 5th, Hamilton 6th. Antonelli does stay 7th behind the man who replaced him at Mercedes. Albon finishes 8th, Carlos Sainz in 9th. Fernando Alonso actually moves up a couple of places to 10th place in the standings in 56 points for the Spaniard. Hadjar and Hulkenberg dropped to 11th and 12th. Behrman 13th, Lawson 14th, Ocon up to 15th, Lance Stroll up to 16th. Yuki Tsunoda actually drops down all the way to 17th place in his season with Red Bull. Gasly in 18th, Bortoletto 19th, Franco Colapinto ends the season at the bottom of the drivers' standings, other than Jack Doohan. Sorry, Jack, I cut you off there at the bottom. And then McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull are top 3 in the Constructors' Championship, as they were before the weekend started. And in fact, nobody has changed position in the Constructors' standings. Ferrari 4th, Williams 5th, Racing Bulls 6th, Aston Martin 7th, Haas will finish in 8th place, Kick Sauber will finish in 9th and become Audi next year. Alpine at the bottom of the Constructors' standings. Wow. What a way to end the season. What a championship battle we had. It has been absolutely amazing. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel for another year. The 2025 campaign has come to an end. We will be live once again in a few minutes' time, sort of post-race, to delve into what could have been, what should have been in this 2025 season and have a chat about all the drivers that have taken part in it. But thank you so much for all of your support. If you could leave a like on the video as you leave, subscribe to the channel, that would be absolutely amazing. If you're over on Twitch, if you could follow us over on Twitch, that would be incredible. Thank you so much for all of your support. Max Verstappen congratulates the Red Bull team, but they couldn't do any more today. Another race victory for the championship goes to Lando Norris. It is back in British hands. He is a one-time world champion. It is Lando Norris for the first time, and a McLaren driver for the first time in such a long time. Thank you so much. I will see you in a bit.